This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily, episode 999 of the show since we started, March 8th, 2021. Craziness. Tomorrow, a huge 1,000th show extravaganza heading into the trade deadline. You're not going to want to miss that. Hopefully you don't miss the show ever, but tomorrow will be a really good one. We're going to have Frank Saravelli, Greg Wyshynski's coming on, and we are in negotiations with Gary Lawless's people. Gary had a bad case of hurt feelings earlier this week, so there has been mediators, much mediation going on. It's looking promising, but no promises until tomorrow. Make sure you join us for that. Of course, today we are locked in on the Winnipeg Jets, who are back at it tonight on Long Island against the New York Islanders, who, according to Dave Pagnotta, our pal from the fourth period, their brass in meetings today, possibly as we speak, about their trade options after they were all but finished last night, losing 4-0 to their crosstown rivals, the New York Rangers. Right now, if you look at the standings, you could say, oh, they're only 5 points out of a playoff spot. Well, there's 5 teams ahead of them as well. They are only ahead of the Pittsburgh Penguins and the Buffalo Sabres right now in the East. So even for Lou Lamoriello, it might be selling time. And of course, from a Winnipeg Jet perspective, we'll be keeping a keen eye on Brock Nelson tonight, who certainly would be near the top of the list, I would imagine, for the Winnipeg Jets, that they're looking to add an impact player down the middle that could play in the top 6 with some playoff experience, that brings some size and obviously scoring ability as well. We'll talk more about Brock Nelson later on when Remis joins me. Jeff Hamilton coming up on the program as well today. And Stephen Ellis from Daily Faceoff. We've already had a deal. Trent Frederick, our favorite, he's on his way to Edmonton in a deal that involves a couple prospects. It involves salary retention by both New Jersey and Boston. We'll find out who the prospects were heading the other way, as well as some of the top prospects that could potentially be dangled as trade bait, including those in the Winnipeg Jets organization. And later on today, we'll also have Chris Voth on, former Bison star, now the head coach of the University of Winnipeg Westman men's volleyball team, who are hosting the Final Four this weekend for the first time. Need a win to qualify for nationals, so we'll check in with Voth. It was funny, we had Ken Bentley on last week. 39 years with the U of M women's volleyball team. And now the new kid on the block, Chris Voth, former Bison player, now Westman coach in his first year, a very successful first year as well. But we'll also be keeping an eye on the wire in case any more deals come down. We can react to them live, and we will be reacting to everything live with an extended show on Friday, as we've done for the past couple trade deadlines. Mark it down. Turn your notifications on. WST will get going at 11 in the morning. Myself, Remis, Connor Rabchak, as well as a plethora of guests popping in and out through what will probably be a 4.5, 5-hour stream and live show with the latest trades from around the league and immediate reaction from a Winnipeg Jets perspective. Just before we bring in Michael Remis, big thanks to the sponsors that make the show happen each and every day. Of course, our friends at Princess Auto, Cool Bet Canada, Rollies Transfer, Canadian Club, St. Vital Dental Center, Manitoba Battery, Wallace & Wallace, F Apparel, Fans First, Little Brown Jug, the Winnipeg Jets, Royal Sports, Boston Pizza, and of course, we are into OT for our Fund a Need campaign with the Health Sciences Center Foundation. Check the link in this description of the podcast or the video. And if you can, please donate before the end of the week, and you'll be entered to win an autographed Winnipeg Jets jersey. Let's get her going. Welcome to everybody in chat. Hit that thumbs up button if you haven't already. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. And welcome in Michael Remis, the CTO of WST. What's going on?
Yeah, just trying to keep track of all these signings, trades. It's happening. We're a couple weeks away from the deadline, and we did have a trade to announce. It was Trent Frederick to Edmonton. Had a signing, a name that was on the trade board, Jake Evans. He gets crossed off, signed an extension with Montreal. And yes, a big week for the Winnipeg Jets out on the road against the Islanders. Chance to put them further away from a playoff spot, but also later this week against Flyers, revenge game, Hustler, and the Devils, who might be without Jack Hughes. They didn't really have much of an update today as they're all on pins and needles waiting to hear what happens with their star center. So feeling good. Great to see everyone in the chat. And yeah, it is show 999 as the countdown to 1,000 is on.
I mean, listen, it's a big week for us. I remember it was a couple months ago. We were like, when are we going to have our 1,000th show?
Mm-hmm.
We started counting out and doing the math and realizing, holy smokes, that's first week in March, which has often been the busiest week, regardless of a 1,000th show anniversary. Because our show anniversary, March 8th, that's a Saturday this year, also right around the NHL Trade Deadline. And a few of the biggest shows, certainly viewers-wise and growth-wise for WST, has been our Trade Deadline shows. So I'm looking forward to firing it up again on Friday, but tomorrow should be fun. And listen, nice of Frank to agree to come on. He's going to be he'll be locked and loaded with the latest from around the National Hockey League when it comes to potential trades, the Winnipeg Jets, and Wyshynski as well. And as I said, mediators are working overtime right now. A potential return of Gary Lawless, who I believe was on show number 1 as well, Remus. Do you remember show number 1 and who the guests were? I think Ed was on, if I'm not mistaken.
I think it was Libel and Gary. I had to look. Frank was on show number 2, so I asked him. I was like, Frank, seems like yesterday. John, I just remember that I had no idea what I was doing. We planned it very fast, and I wasn't even sure if we could get the guests on it. And I think Frank was only on audio because we couldn't figure it out. I was using Skype for show 1, RIP Skype, which got shut down last week by Microsoft. So
all-time bag fumble.
That was
in
for
business
Skype
history.
They did roll it over to Microsoft Teams, but yeah, Skype was number 1, and then all of a sudden everyone started using Zoom.
The pandemic happened, Zoom started,
yeah,
and Skype quickly became basically obsolete after being the video chat platform that everyone used beforehand. But anyways, yeah, big week coming up and a big game tonight for the Winnipeg Jets as they look to, I kind of joked about this yesterday, Remus, knowing that the Islanders were playing the New York Rangers. But listen, after they lost last night, I think the writing's on the wall already for the Islanders. But if the Jets could go in, emphatically pour the dirt on the grave of the Islanders for their playoff hopes this season, maybe, just maybe, Kevin Cheveldayoff can do a bit of business with Lou there in New York and get Brock Nelson out. I will say this, the more, and I thought about this a lot last night, I know there's a lot of conjecture about, wanting to bring in a player that has some term. And listen, I get that. Certainly in the Jets situation, I'm here for that. And I think that's a key thing for the blue line. If we're talking about a Ristolainen or a Jamie Alexiak, I mean, the ability to keep them for at least another year and another playoff run. But to me, if Ryan O'Reilly's not available, and it doesn't sound like he will be to the Winnipeg Jets, to me, Brock Nelson is the best option, number 1 target for Winnipeg, and a guy that, I'd be willing to give up that first round pick, a significant prospect, do what you can do. I mean, the Jets have done this before for players that are essentially rentals, and that is what Brock Nelson would be. I mean, you can't count on anything when it comes to re-signing a guy. But man, the package that he brings, where he plays in the lineup, the fact that he's a center, the size that he would bring, presumably playing in between Nikolai Ehlers and Cole Perfetti, to me would just be an absolutely perfect fit. The problem, of course, is that the Winnipeg Jets won't be the only team that'll be interested in Brock Nelson. You can count on that. Now, he does have a 16 team no trade list. And, based on what we've heard, I'm sure Winnipeg is probably on that list. I mean, they seem to be on, what was it? They polled players, 48% of no trades. And again, he's got half the league, so you would think that. But I'm not sure that that's such a big of a deal. Because a guy like Brock Nelson at his state in his career, like where he decides he's going to play his next contract, he'll have options as a UFA at the end of the year. But for right now, I mean, you're not signing up to play in Winnipeg for 3 or 4 years. You're talking about joining the number 1 team in the National Hockey League to come in a prime spot, playing with Nikolai Ehlers and Cole Perfetti with a potential playoff run ahead of you that could even further enhance your value as an unrestricted free agent. So, I mean, I'm not worried about the no move part of his contract. What I am worried about is just the amount of demand around the league for a player like that, as so many teams seem to be buyers and there's not a lot of sellers. And that's a good spot for Lou Lamoriello to be in. I don't think there's any doubt about that, despite the fact that his team sucked and certainly underperformed as opposed to what they expected this year.
Yeah, when they hired Patrick Waugh last year, I don't think they envisioned, this type of run that they've had. And you look at the Islanders, they're going to have to make some decisions. The UFAs after the season are Brock Nelson and Kyle Palmieri. I mean, I don't think that's the notable ones for them. So they want to, make a trade. We'll have to see. I imagine every team would be in on a player like Brock Nelson, second line center. Colorado, they're not happy with Casey Middlestad. Is that one of them? I mean, you just look around the league. Everyone could use a second line center with size. So the no trade clause does, your ears get perked up. If he can go to somewhere that's not on there, I'm sure he would rather go there than Winnipeg. So we'll have to see. It just seems to be a reality that he's dealing with, as per just about every insider. Kyprios noting it yesterday at Sportsnet. Elliot Friedman as well saying, hey, the Jets are trying to make some moves here, but they're running into some roadblocks that other teams don't have. And yeah, I agree. Every other team, every player probably would want to play for a team that's in first place. Who wouldn't? But I guess for a player like Nelson, he's going to have the choice, and he'll have
the choice in the offseason. He can go wherever the hell he wants.
Yeah, but what if it's a team that he's thinking about signing the offseason, they want to trade? Just go there now and see if you like it or not. I don't think it's like such a no-brainer.
That's assuming. I mean, it's not up to him to make the trade. It's Lou Lamoriello that's making the trade, and he's going to find out what the best package for the player that he wants to trade. And I mean, I guess he could say no, find one of these teams who I'd rather go to more for this next 8 weeks. But I listen.
Yes,
the situation that the Jets are in right now as the number 1 team in the league, I think, should be enough, like it has been before for Paul Stastny and some other players, to say, okay, this is an incredible opportunity for me. Let's go. So as I said, I mean, I guess you or some other people may think differently, but for a guy like Brock Nelson that is looking for a new contract, the opportunity to play on a top team with legitimate Stanley Cup hopes, to me, I think would trump, even if he had a terrible opinion of Winnipeg and hated it, which I'm not saying that he would. There's a lot of, listen, he was probably hanging out with Kyle Connor and Connor Hellebuck at the Four Nations on Team USA. So I listen, as I said, the worry is that some other team comes in with a much better offer for a player like that. But he would be at the top of my wish list right now, and he'll be a guy that we'll be paying close attention to I certainly was during the Four Nations, and he seemed to climb the ladder throughout the tournament. And, to have a guy at 6'4", 205, 210 to play in the middle of Perfetti and Ehlers that have been pretty darn dynamic over the past 3 weeks or so, really trying to find themselves together. To me, he would be such a good fit. And again, right now, we're focused on this season for the Winnipeg Jets. Are you going to have to pay a cost to get a Brock Nelson? Absolutely, you will. But it might be worth it in the end, considering what he can bring in. I guess the other question is, Remis, and I'll put this out to folks, because again, we'll focus on Brock Nelson tonight. Thursday, they'll be playing Philadelphia, and we'll be talking about Rasmus Ristolainen again. Considering the assets needed to acquire, one of the quote-unquote bigger fish, if you will, if you're trading your first-round pick, if you're trading a prospect like a Colby Barlow or, one of those things that would be on the table for this sort of a move, why not question of the day for Not Autocorp over at Waverly and McGillivray is this. Your top assets and prospects, would you prefer them used for a center that could fit in the top six, presumably in between Ehlers and Perfetti, or would you prefer it used on a defenseman? And a defenseman that potentially would come with a year or two of term. Let us know in the chat. What do you think about that, Remis? I mean, obviously you don't have unlimited resources to make these deals. Is it a Brock Nelson type player that could play in the middle of your top six? Or is it a defenseman that could help shore up the Jet blue line that should be the priority for Kevin Cheveldayoff?
Yeah, and just back to Brock Nelson, he's on a heater. Has 9 points in his last 8 games. As for the needs for the Jets, I mean, we haven't really mentioned the game tonight. The big news was Dylan Samberg out of the lineup, and we saw what their defense looked like without Samberg, when he was injured, without Josh Morrissey in that game against St. Louis after the Four Nations break. And defense, when those guys are out, it's a little thin. So for me, the priority would be, to trade and acquire some defensive depth. You can get a guy who's, top pair, middle pair. You need someone who can step up. If it's going to be a depth guy, I mean, works too. But as far as prospects, I think everyone would have to be on the table. You're in first place this year. Prospect, couple years down the road, doesn't really help you. I know you have to look to the future, but this is an opportunity that how often is it going to come when you're in position for the President's Trophy at March 4? So I remember, where there's some trades that were discussed, like Jack Roslovic, the Jets maybe didn't want to trade him in a possible Mark Stone package. I don't know if Mark Stone would have came here, but him or Ville Heinola a couple years ago. Sometimes it works out where the player doesn't pan out, or sometimes it's you don't know what the player is going to be in the future, and you need to win now. And I think that should be prioritized.
There's a lot of people in the chat as we, let's do fan feedback for fans first right now, considering this question. Of course, fan feedback brought to you by Fans First, your number one spot for buying and selling Winnipeg tickets on the resale market with no fees. What you see is what you pay, and the best and easiest option for Winnipeg season ticket holders or ticket holders to sell their tickets. You get paid the very next day. I am seeing a lot of defense on this. I see Darth Skater is just dropping D's in the chat. Jake Slobodian, left shot defenseman for sure. Derek Schmidt, defense. Phyllis, big D needed. It's your boy Bruce, blue line. And Scardy, not Sklardy, Jets don't feel big enough in the back end to survive in the playoffs. And T. Will said, we tried the second line center last year. Let's try getting a D this year. They're going to get a defenseman. And I do think adding some size on the blue line, should be able to be done at somewhat of a reasonable cost, depending on the sort of player that you're looking at. I mean, if you're talking about a Luke Shen type, a veteran player that could come in and play in that bottom pairing, I mean, you're not talking about the assets that would need for a top 4 guy or certainly a top 6 forward. I mean, to me, and I guess my question to you, Reem, And by the way, keep the comments coming in the chat. We'll continue this conversation. Fans First, fan feedback brought to you by Fans First, by fans, for fans, no fees. And again, I don't want this to come across as a shot at Vlad Nemestikov, because he's earned his new contract. He's been so versatile. But I guess my question is, beyond the first line, would you be confident going into a playoff series, or hopefully multiple playoff series, with your second line being Ehlers, Perfetti, and Vlad? To me, that's the area that, when you look at the overall thing, I think the improvement, if you went from Nemestikov to a player like Nelson, would be so significant that it would be worth what it would take to get. What about you, Reem?
Yeah, that would be a huge ad for sure. I do think, if you could make an ad, like look at the Oilers last year when they got Matthias Ekholm, that was such a perfect fit. Now, I don't think that type of player is out there. So, it seems like second line center of that caliber out there too. Like, you could go for both, grab a player like Brock Nelson if you can get him. You think he's going to be a fit and would waive his no trade clause to come, close to home for him, playing on a top team. There's a number of reasons why he would want to waive. But
half of Warroad could come out and be part of the whiteout.
Look, I don't know. Like, there's a 49% chance Winnipeg's on his no trade clause, and if you lose offered trades from one team that's on and one team that's not, he's going to go to the one that's not on the list. So,
well, wait a second. Keep in mind when they put these no trades together. I mean, these are done when they sign their deal, and I totally get it. But I mean, the circumstances is entirely different. Talking about being acquired at the deadline to a team that is in first place, and you have no term remaining on your contract. I mean, that's a very, very different, question.
I'm not going to argue with that. I'm just saying, guys might look at it and just shake their head no. Say they want to, the jersey just doesn't feel right for them. People have reasons for whatever.
Jersey doesn't feel right.
People have reasons, Hustler. Okay, they don't have to be logical that they have them. You could have every reason why it would make sense. But yeah, I do think they need a bit of an extra help on D. Is it going to be an Alexiak type, Carson Soucy, a third pair D? But I agree. The Nelson would be a huge boost. So it's tough. I think you can go with, like, you want to say one of each. Can you take both?
Well, I think you can. I think the big, like, as I said, you only have so many assets. I think rounding out the blue line with a piece or two that would be not as expensive and spending the assets on a number 2C, that's my preference. But I do see it. Now, Matt has said Brock Nelson's a terrible idea and says any player above $5 million destroys our stable salary cap. Matt, don't worry about it, buddy. This is one of the great things that the Jets have done all season long, is building up this cap space. Murat noted today the Jets are going to have $12 million of cap space at the deadline. So for a player, especially a player like Brock Nelson, where you're not committed to him beyond this year, for the short term, not only does a player like that come in, it allows you to still do some other things. The Jets, of all the teams, like, cap space, not an issue right now when it comes to the deadline. The Jets, of all the teams that could be buyers, might be in the best situation. You look what Edmonton's got to do to make it through, to get a guy like Trent Frederick having two different teams retaining salary on that. Speaking of that deal, Stephen Ellis is going to join us in just a minute from Daily Faceoff, fresh off another all-star floor hockey goaltending performance last night. Just before we bring in Stephen, let me shout out our friends at Rolly's Transfer. Family owned and operated in Winnipeg for over 60 years and the most trusted name in moving in Manitoba. If you have a move planned for your family coming up as we get into spring and summer, make sure you trust that move to Rolly's and get the white glove treatment that Rolly's Transfer has been famous for as the most trusted name around in the moving game. Pop on over to their website at Rollies.com. You'll see in the top right corner the request an estimate feature. Click on that. Pop in WST in the promo code because the guys at Rollies have a special discount on moving supplies and moving services for Winnipeg Sports Talk listeners. And then let them know when you're planning on moving, where in the province you're going, and what needs to be moved. And the friendly staff at Rollies will turn it around real quick with a great quote for you and get you locked in for the Rollies White Glove service on your next move. Moving in 2025, trust Rollies Transfer. Find out more or request an estimate today over at rollies.com. Well, the spring is here, and there's lots of spring cleaning happening in yards, in homes. How about in your mouth, folks? If it's been a minute since you have been to the dentist, you've been putting it off, you've been procrastinating, take it from me, not a great idea. And at minimum, you want that grill looking good heading into spring. Our friends at St. Vital Dental Center are ready and waiting for you. Dr. Terry and his great staff with every option of dental services you need, everything from simple cleanings, like a spring cleaning for your mouth, all the way to things like dental implants and more complex dental surgery. The great thing about St. Vital Dental, in addition to the great people there, conveniently located at 167 St. Anne's, free parking right in the back of the building. Couldn't have a much more convenient place and great service as well. For all your dental needs, call Dr. Terry and the gang at St. Vital Dental Center. You can find them online at stvitaldental.ca. And yes, it is warming up a little bit. We are through the meat of the Winnipeg winter, and very soon we'll be looking at getting those dirt bikes out, putting the sleds away for the year, and having a little bit of fun on the water. Of course, all those items, you need batteries for it. Now, Manitoba Battery's been getting us through this winter with car and truck batteries at the best prices in town, beating the pants off the big box stores. And Manitoba Battery is your local outlet for the best prices for batteries of all makes and models, period. So pop down and see them, Logan Avenue or Dovercourt Drive. They're their two locations, or simply shop online at manitobabattery.com. Shopping local, keeping your money in our community, and getting the best prices as well. Again, order online or give them a call today, manitobabattery.com. All right, we've already had a signing today. Jake Evans re-upping for 4 years with the Montreal Canadiens, and a deal involving the Oilers, the Bruins, the Devils, and a couple of prospects. Let's bring in one of our go-to draft guys and prospect experts, Stephen Ellis of Daily Faceoff. Stephen, what's going on? And first off, I did see that incredible save last night in net. I mean, great camera work as well on it, and you seem to really be thriving. Much like Spencer Knight last night in his first game with the Blackhawks. I'm not sure who had a better night.
Me, easily, because that was the game-saving save, and I know a ton of NHL scouts are probably watching, and yeah, it's like I like to post, just like I bring cameras to my games. It just kind of started out as fun. Yeah, like let's say, like right off. Well, this is the very first save where I just had to extend my toe. I only caught it with my big toe. Happens to be my broken toe, so that really hurt. But yeah, I post clips like this because I kind of want. Getting a phone call. I want people to partake in ball hockey or inline hockey because it's a lot cheaper than playing ice hockey. It's fun. You can have a good time with it, and yeah, it's a good time. And also, like I just custom vinyl wrapped my helmet recently. So
look at this, celebrating our Four Nations victory with some maple leafs on there. Gotta love it.
Yeah, well, I got it. I wrapped it right before the Four Nations, and I tweeted, and people are like, "Hey, like Jordan Binnington's Canada's goal. Like, can you please play instead of him?" And he did. You know what?
It was the pressure from you that maybe took him to those great heights for our country in fending off the Americans and getting us the win.
Yeah, honestly, yeah. Like I think when you look at the greatest goalies of all time, people look at Hasek, Patrick Waugh, and I plan to be on that list in a few years. I hope that my random ball hockey on Monday and Wednesday and Sundays just transforms my career, and I could be an NHL goalie before too long. I could probably play goalie on a few NHL teams.
Put yourself on one of your draft lists this year, and we can talk about you as a top prospect.
The best part is we actually have like legitimate scouts that play on our team. So people like, I make the joke that like scouts are coming to our games, and it's like it's not wrong. We actually have scouts on our team.
Hey, let's get to this trade today. and for folks, we touched on it very briefly at the beginning, but Trent Frederick, our favorite here in Winnipeg, is on his way to the Oilers, along with Max Jones, who was in the minors in the American Hockey League. Now, the Bruins are getting the St. Louis second-round pick, an Oilers fourth-round pick in 2026, defenseman Max Wanner, and the Devils are retaining 50% on Frederick and get prospect Shane Lachance. Just to give us a bit of an idea about the market, Stephen, tell us about the prospects that were involved in this deal and, your thoughts on the value that the Oilers had to give up to make this trade.
I think it's worthwhile value because Trent Frederick was going to probably cost a lot on this market because he's a guy that he was easily the best tough guy available on of any player. And he's not healthy right now. He's injured, so that doesn't help. So it'll be a bit till the Oilers get to see what he's able to do. But he's that guy that's going to be really tough to play against in the playoffs. And we saw that the last couple of years for Boston. Is even when their scoring would start to dry up, I thought that Frederick looked good. So it's been a down year for him. But I still think it was a worthwhile investment there. In terms of the prospects, you look at Lachance. He's the guy I'm thinking might have the best shot. It sounded like he was never going to sign with the Oilers. He's going to the Devils where his dad actually works for the team. He's having a very good college season. He's a 6'5" winger who's got some speed, got some energy, and can play with skilled guys. I think he's got a shot. With Max Wanner, not a great season this year in the AHL, but still someone who is just strong defensively, and I think could potentially be a 6th or 7th in the NHL one day. And then you look at Peter Hauser going to Edmonton. He's definitely a long shot guy, and all three of those prospects are long shots here. But when it comes to Hauser, he likes to hit guys. He's got a good shot. There's a lot of power to his game. He's just not a great skater, and that will probably hurt his NHL potential. But I will say, I don't think anyone expected Wanner or Lachance to be real NHL prospects 2 years ago, and now they are. Who knows?
I want to ask you about prospects that were in particular with the Winnipeg Jets. The Jets are in New York tonight, taking on the Islanders. There's certainly interest in a guy like Brock Nelson. I mean, the Jets have a couple needs to really fortify a lineup that has been at the top of the league most of the year. That second line center position, and obviously Brock Nelson is a pending UFA, could be a nice fit there. We've talked about guys like Ryan O'Reilly, were he to be available. And then there's, some needs to beef up that blue line. If we're talking about players like that, that the cost is going to be significant. You're probably going to have to, push your first round pick out the door. And there's probably going to be prospects that will be needed. We've heard the name Colby Barlow thrown out as a potential guy that the Jets, drafted in the first round, do really like, but could be available. What do you make of Barlow's season, his value right now, and thoughts on maybe a couple of the other prospects in the Winnipeg Jets system that might be on the list of other rival GMs if they're talking to Kevin Cheveldayoff?
Yeah, with Barlow, it's been a difficult season. He is playing at a point per game this year, but that would actually be the worst production he's had. And his production has fallen the last couple of years. But part of that was when you look how good that Owen Sound team was a couple of years ago compared to what it was last year. It wasn't totally fair for him there. With Oshawa, he's got an opportunity to play with great players. And it feels like he's not dynamic enough. That's the biggest concern for me. He's really good in a straight line. He knows where he's got to go. He could take players off their game because he's physical. Doesn't take a ton of dumb penalties either, but he's willing to get in those dirty areas. But he's still able to score, but he's not shooting as much. He's not getting those high danger chances. It looks like he's kind of been more of a trailer in a lot of cases. So I don't think his trade value is super high right now, but still an intriguing piece. I still think he'll be an NHL player. I'd be interested to see if the Jets kind of capitalize on someone like Kevin He, the season he's had. And he has cooled off a little bit. He hasn't been as good as he was in that first half. But I think when you look at the Niagara Ice Dogs, it's a competitive team, a lot of skilled guys. And there's been some things where he might not be the smartest player out there all the time, or he might go out there and make some defensive mistakes. But he's got a great shot, very fast. And I know teams would definitely be interested if they dangled him as one of those key pieces. But you look at the group that they have, and you've got Chaz Lucius, he's a center. You've got Kieran Walton having a great season. He's a center. You've got Brad Lambert, who could play center in the wing. You got Braden Yeager, a center. There's a lot of centers in there. And the Islanders could use some more center depth. They can use a lot of depth. Like, they have one of the worst pipelines in hockey. If they were to go and make a deal that involved getting Nelson, even if it's just for that 1 year, and you kind of hope that you can bring it longer, there's a lot of pieces there that you could probably be willing to move on from. Because at a certain point, like the Jets, they got a good pipeline, and it's rare to have a team with that solid of a pipeline and be a contender, but you want to go out there and win. And this is a good year to make that happen. If you can get those pieces that make it work, that's great. I did say in the chat earlier that a lot of the best deals at the trade deadline are not the high-end deals, not the Brock Nelsons, not the guys like that. It's those depth players, those guys who could be very good in the bottom six. You look at this Jets team, number 2 center upgrade would be good. They can get that. They've got the pipeline to make it work, and as long as they're not trading multiple of those prospects, I think you can feel comfortable trading almost anybody.
You know, it's funny. There's a couple guys that I think the Jets would really like to keep within the in the group. Certainly one is Elias Salmonson, who is playing his first year with the Manitoba Moose, who was at the AHL All-Star game, was injured for a little bit. And listen, he's not as flashy. I mean, I see that he's not even on the DFO top 15 defenseman list for NHL-owned assets. So I'm not even sure you get the value that you probably would think. So I can't see him being moved. And, you know, you mentioned Braden Yeager. Yeager, maybe because of the fact that he came in the Rucker McGroarty deal, is a Western Canadian kid. As the Jets sort of move a little bit more towards that, he would be another guy there. But Brad Lambert's interesting. I mean, he's a guy that I think, you know, is close to making that push for regular time in the National Hockey League. Now, he's in a Jets organization that is pretty deep. Obviously, the team has performed incredibly well. Brad Lambert, as a prospect, you know, the value to him. And is there any value for Ville Heinola, who, you know, just simply hasn't played very much, hasn't been back in the American League because they feel he'd be sniped off waivers, but is pretty clearly down the pecking order of the current Winnipeg depth chart in the eyes of the organization and the coaching staff?
Yeah, with Heinola, it's like, you know, you probably lost the opportunity to get a ton of value for him. Like that, you probably had to have done that a couple of years ago, because it feels like he's been in trade rumors for a long time now. But I think just for his sake, he just has to go play somewhere else. He's got to go somewhere, just get a fresh start, get a lot of ice time. Like, go to a team like Utah, probably can go out there and be an upgrade over someone like a bunch of the guys they have there. He could be kind of an upgrade from, and maybe that's something they do there. So with Heinola, it sucks because you could see that skill, that talent, and he probably should be playing more, but there's just no real path for him there. And then you look at Lambert, a guy that I've been a big fan of since like he was like 15 or 16 years old. My one concern this whole time is, how does he play when he isn't the most dominant player on the ice? There are games where he can go out there and just take control, gets the puck a lot, can get 5-6 shots a game, make some great plays, and it looks great. There's other games where he plays more of a deeper role in the lineup, doesn't touch the puck much, and he almost looks discouraged out there. And that's the concern with him. He could be a bit too hot and cold. Like, the skill is there, the execution always isn't. There isn't always there. And that kind of reminds me a bit of Eli Tolvanen, kind of the same age, just a dominant player at his own age group. Looks great in the KHL, where he played a leading role in Jokerit, played really good at the Olympics. But as soon as he wasn't playing top line minutes in Nashville, it just wasn't clicking. So I do wonder if there's a similarity there for Lambert, but there's still a ton of skill there. And I think he's 21 years old right now, there's going to be, if he is available in a trade, there should be no shortage of teams interested, because he's still really intriguing. And if he could put everything together on any given night, he's still a valuable player.
Yeah, I mean, listen, his numbers have not been great this year. The Manitoba Moose have really struggled, and he has sort of struggled along with that club. But even in the 5 games that he played with the Jets earlier this year, I mean, there's a level of speed that he brings, and that, to me, I think, you know, you want to have the offensive upside, but I mean, for me, and watching what we saw at the Four Nations and just seeing what happens in this league game after game after game, the speed quotient is such a deal breaker, I think, on a lot of players, Steven, that if you're able to not just keep up, but maybe even be a player that can push the pace speed-wise, that is a quality that NHL GMs will pay for.
Yeah, 100%. And there's certain thing about you want to be fast, and then you want to be fast but know what to do with the puck. And we've seen a lot of young prospects, and Lambert is one that's definitely a perfect example of a guy who skates hard, makes these great plays, and then like almost skates himself into a corner or into a spot where he can't kind of come out of, and he's got to play catch up, or he's got to go and make a quick move that might not work out because now he's outnumbered type thing. So, but in the end, like, there's things that scouts love. It's guys who bring the energy, the guys who are smart, and the guys that are speedy. And he can bring all that on any given night. It's just, can he do it consistently enough to play a big role in the NHL? Because I don't think he's like a third line player. I don't think he's a fourth line player. If you want to get the most out of him, I feel like he's got to be a top 6 player, but he's got to show that consistency.
Any other prospects that you've heard in and around these trade talks that are intriguing? I mean, we're always focusing on who are the big current NHL players that are going to be potentially moving. You've got a great read on some of the returns going on. I mean, are there any areas or any players that, are doing well that, or maybe in Ville Heinola type spots where they might not have a current fit with their team, that you're intrigued to see where they end up?
Well, see, I guess to kind of hijack the answer a little bit, the one team I'd be really looking forward to seeing, and there's been pushback, but I wonder what the Capitals are going to do, because they've got some really good prospects there. They've got, Cole Hudson's got a lot of trade value right now, the way he's playing. They've got a lot of solid wingers in their pipeline. Could they use some of those assets to go out there and win now? Because I'm thinking, like, you got to do whatever it takes to win the Stanley Cup this year. Alex Ovechkin's playing really good hockey. If he breaks the scoring record, is he going to be super motivated in what will likely be his final season in the NHL? I'm obviously not reporting anything, but he's old at this point, right? Like, he'll be like 40 in his next contract. So, like, you got to think that his NHL days are numbered. You got to go out there and try to win that now. And they've got some good prospects. I also wonder if the Carolina Hurricanes are going to be close to signing Alexander Nikishin. Now, if you don't know his story, he's like one of the best KHL defensemen of all time. They drafted him 2020, I think it was like 3rd round. And they drafted him for being a big 6'4" defenseman that was solid defensively. Then he starts racking up these 50-point seasons in the KHL, which is pretty much unheard of for anybody that's not a 30, 35-year-old moving to that league of NHL experience. So for him to go and be as good as he has been in the last couple of years is very intriguing. The Hurricanes do have a good defensive pipeline, so they got to figure out where he fits in. Like, they also got to figure out what to do with Scott Morrow. But Nikishin, his KHL contract is coming up this spring, so he is eligible to sign and play quite soon for the Hurricanes. But will he play there, or will he look to go somewhere else? That'll be interesting. So that's a huge trade chip. Not saying they are going to trade him, because he could be a top 4 defenseman for the Hurricanes next year. But I got to think there's a lot of teams looking at it and saying, like, oh, if we can get this guy, he's going to be a big difference maker in the NHL. Because again, 6'4", offensively creative. I could see him getting 50 points in the NHL next year as a blue liner. I think he's going to be pretty good.
Hey, speaking of KHL, before we go, let me ask you this. The Jets selected Dmitry Reshevsky in 2021 in the 5th round. Since then, he's had some really impressive numbers, playing regularly with Moscow Dynamo. He was 43 points with 24 goals last year in 67 games, 5 goals in 10 playoff games. And this year, he's 18 and 18 for 36 in 58 games. This is not a guy we talk about very often. I mean, maybe out of sight, out of mind. But it was interesting to see his name, the rights to Reshevsky, involved in a few kind of mock trades for potential players. Where is he at right now? Do you know anything about whether he may come to the National Hockey League, and would you be surprised to see him? Like, would he have value as an asset for the Winnipeg Jets if they were, looking to add to a package to try to put it over the finish line?
To a point. Like, he's 24, he's not a spectacular skater by any means. Definitely more of a down year for him this year, although, like, that's kind of just in general his team. I'd almost kind of like wish that his contract in the KHL ended last year and he came over. I do wonder if that would have helped his value because there was a lot of people talking about him last year. Not as much this year. Nothing that he does spectacular, but he is like a good shooter. He knows where to get in those scoring areas. But again, he's 24. He's kind of like one of those guys that you look at every year, those European free agents. You wonder if you're going to come over after a breakout season. And most times we're talking about a guy who might be a third line player. And that's kind of what I see from him. Like he's very energetic, but not the world's quickest skater. But when you need him for those good little bursts around the net to go and clear space, like he can do it. So there's definitely some value there. Not a ton of trade value, I'd say, but the fact that like you look at there's a lot of good forward prospects in Winnipeg system. They could afford to move on from him if they wanted to, and it wouldn't be too big of a deal, but a little hot and cold at points. But at least from what I've seen in recent weeks, he's having a really good run in the KHL in the last like 2 weeks. So you like that, but I don't know how much trade value he really has as a 24-year-old.
Stephen Ellis from Daily Faceoff. Check out his work over at DFO. We're going to have Frank on tomorrow for the latest trade rumors from around the league. And what are you going to be doing as we get into deadline day? Kind of being on the back end, telling everyone about the prospects that are being included in these deals?
Yeah, so I'll be kind of running the website that on deadline day. I'll be doing just kind of assigning stuff for everybody. I'll be writing some stories throughout the day myself. And then one of my favorite stories to do is on the Monday following the deadline is scouting reports on every prospect traded. So if the Jets get anybody, I don't think they're going to get any prospects, but you never know.
Never know.
But they'll be there. And I know he's not technically a prospect, but Spencer Knight to Chicago, beautiful move by the Blackhawks. He's going to be so good. He just needed that opportunity to go out there and get consistent starts. He's going to get it now.
See that start last night?
Well, no, because I was playing hockey, but I saw the numbers, and man, like just again, like I think Spencer Knight was thinking, like I want to be like Stephen Ellis one day with those great saves, and then that helped him win.
It's motivation. You gotta lean on something to get yourself over the top. Hey, thanks for doing this, pal. We'll catch up soon, and then enjoy what should be a great week.
Can't wait. Thanks so much.
Appreciate it. S. Ellis Hockey. You can follow him on X and check out Steven's work over at Daily Faceoff. All right, going to bring Remis in, but I do want to remind you, we got more tickets for WST, our final game of the month. That is coming up on March 28th against the New Jersey Devils. It's a Friday night. We're 5-0 on the season with WSTers up in Section 316. So if you were thinking about getting seats last week and there were none, get them now. And again, because we sold out our first allotment as early this time, I would suggest to jump on these seats before they are gone. Of course, your ticket also includes a beer or a beverage of your choice, and that will be executed through the Jets 360 app. But go to winnipegjets.com/WST. Our final game of the month. We look to go a perfect 6-0 on the season together as a group. Join us now, winnipegjets.com/WST. Grab your tickets, and we'll see you then. All right, let's get Remis back in here. And you know what, Remo, interesting stuff. I do wonder, and we've talked about this for years, everyone focuses on their prospects so much. There's always the fear of sort of overvaluing your own players and your own prospects. But Steven does make a good point. I mean, they have done a real good job at drafting, and I wasn't even going to go down the road of a Kevin He or a Kieran Walton. But when you consider what those players have done this year, regardless of where they were drafted, and, you know, all of a sudden you look at the landscape of what the Jets have built up in the prospect cupboard, and there are a number of options, certainly for rival GMs to try to pick from, and things for Kevin Cheveldayoff to offer.
Yeah, when you think about who's available or who would be offered in a trade, you know, the names at the top come to mind. Do we see Brad Lambert, Elias Salamonson?
I'm with Dom Zappia. I think the two guys that are on the no-go list are Yeager and Salamonson.
Okay, you go down the list. Like, I'm looking at the Athletics rankings. You know, Kieran Walton, he's vaulted to number 4. He was just drafted. They have Chaz Lucius
in the 6th round.
Yeah, Chaz Lucius is on there. You know, he's been in and out of the lineup this year. Colby Barlow as well. Chibrikov, he's injured. this year. So I'm curious, like when we talk about trades, do we see one of these names? And I think you can't always be thinking about tomorrow because what's the line? Sammy Hagar in the Van Halen CD concert. Tomorrow may never come. Hustler, you got to live here in the now. And here and now, you're trying to win a Stanley Cup. So, what's that Van Halen live album? He goes on a big rant. But
I did not have a Van Hagar reference on today's show on my bingo card.
Yeah, big
Sammy
Hagar.
Cross it off if you did.
Cross it off. We got Rutger reference, Van Hagar. So, I'm curious what they're going to do. How to navigate this? We've heard it's not a deep draft. They do have a lot of. They do have their first round pick. They have traded that, and maybe having the late picks of Walton and Kevin He, who vaulted up their prospect list, make you say, hey, they're going to trade the first round pick again this upcoming year.
Just give me I don't have this in front of me. Give a quick rundown of just this athletic list of the top prospects. If
Sure.
Walton is now at 4.
I thought you wanted the name of that live Van Halen CD, but it's who do they have? They have Walton at 4. This is Scott Wheeler. Shaz Lucius, Colby Barlow at 6, Chibrikov 7, Kevin He, Alphonse Fry.
Who's 1, 2, 3?
1, 2, 3 is Salmonson, Lambert, and Yeager. This is 1, 2, 3 prospect.
Wow, so Kieran Walton's all the way up to 4.
Yeah.
Ahead of Kevin He, which is interesting. Again,
Kieran Walton, Kieran Walton. And then Dom DiVincentis and Thomas Milic. I believe it's the Milic bobblehead day coming up, too.
Well, and speaking of Dom DiVincentis, Dom was the first star today down at Canada Life Center. That's right. The Moose had a 10:30 a.m. game today, packing the school kids in. And as the Moose tweeted out, class is dismissed. But the Moose with a big 5-2 win today. And Dom DiVincentis did have 35 saves today in the victory. Our buddy Axel Janssen-Fjallby with 2 goals. Jared Anderson Dolan with a couple of assists. The 3 stars in the game today. And the Moose beat the Grand Rapids Griffins in front of a packed house of very loud school kids. Those games are always so much fun. 5-2. The Moose are the winners. All right, let's get to Jeff Hamilton's going to join us in 10 or so. But let's get to tonight's game. And as Michael mentioned right off the bat, no Dylan Sandberg tonight, and is due to a family matter. Marat reporting they expect him back with the club for the Thursday night game. But Scott O'Neill talked about missing Dylan Sandberg tonight and getting ready for the Islanders.
Yeah, he's got some family issues there, so he won't be in tonight. He'll be flying back in tomorrow.
And then just sliding into the game itself tonight, obviously Islanders coming off of a back-to-back, not much travel involved with that back-to-back, but just what stood out to you about them in the first meeting that you guys were able to come out on top of?
Yeah, they're a hard-working team, real detailed. They kind of like Philly the other night. They play heavy. They're going to contest every puck, and they got some good veterans. They're in a hunt as well, like a lot of these teams we're seeing in the East. They're still fighting every day for points. So I know it was a big loss from last night, but we have to take advantage of them playing and making sure that we're focused on what we need to do to get out and get after them right off that first period.
All right, so there's Coach Arneal on Dylan Sandberg's status and tonight's game. Arnie was asked if this game spot is a little tougher right now, or is everything a little tougher as you get closer to the playoffs? And, of course, that trade deadline coming up on Friday.
We're getting desperate teams, for sure. We're seeing a lot of these teams that they're kind of getting into make-or-break situations. And, I like it because it makes us be, at our best. It forces us to make sure that, that we're doing everything we need to do to continue to climb as we want to do. I think that, it's kind of odd that we're out east here like this for this late in the year. But at the end of the day, you're kind of looking around the league and you're kind of seeing it, the West going east and the East going west. But important points for us. We still have our own battle. We still have Dallas and Colorado Mini all sitting there, and they're not going away either. So we just continue to take care of our business.
All right. Kevin Cheveldayoff is, of course, busy getting ready for Friday's trade deadline. The Brass, I believe, are going to stay in Philadelphia into the deadline, finish up business, and then meet the team before game time on Friday, I believe, in New Jersey. But here's Arnie on the boss being along with the squad for the trip.
Yeah, I think he's got a pretty good read on where we're at. I think that us being on this, like I mentioned, being on a road trip like this where it's, a 7-day trip and we're out east, and I think that a lot of our scouts certainly will all be coming in. I think it just works itself out because of the 3 and 4 nights and the back-to-back games on the Thursday, Friday, just gets everybody in one spot. So I think that for us, that's the other side of the business for me, for the players. It's about focusing on tonight and making sure that we're doing everything we need to do. That stuff will take care of itself.
Oh, we're going to hear from Cole Perfetti in just a minute, but he continually plays more consistently, has been productive lately. Arniel was asked about just the maturation of Cole Perfetti and where he's at right now.
He's not so hard on himself. It's probably one of the biggest areas for me. That would start between the years. I think that he's just being in this game and one year older. I think that he recognized that all it does is kind of, it doesn't help his cause. And I think that you throw the other side of the things in that he's real competitive. Every shift he goes out and he's competitive and he wants to win his puck battles. His compete level is real good, and then just the confidence that you see in him. That he's not afraid to make plays, and he's a smart, heady kid that knows when he uses his skill set that he can have success.
All right, so there's Scott Arniel. Now here's one more, and I was kind of mentioning earlier that the Jets with a win tonight can really pour the rest of the dirt on the Islanders' playoff hopes. But he was asked, if they could use the idea to put a team out of the playoffs as some kind of a motivation for tonight. Here's that and a little bit more from the coach.
I don't know if we come out and look at it and say, we can finish the Islanders off or we can finish Philly off or the Devils. Well, not the Devils, but at the end of the day, I think that we still look at our own schedule and our own conference and our own division. There's some things that we want to continue to do. We want to make sure we're at the top of the heap in the Central, and if we can get the same thing in the West, that's important to us. So we just, I think, when you're playing these teams, just a reminder that how desperate they are and what they're going to do, and we're seeing it since all these games coming out of the break. I think San Jose obviously was the only one, but everybody else is scraping and clawing and either blocking shots or doing everything it takes to try to win hockey games. And I like the fact that they're doing that because it makes us have to play at a continued high level.
All right, so there's Coach Arniel on tonight's matchup and everything going on around his hockey club as they go into a quick 3-4 and 4-6 out on the East Coast starting tonight against the New York Islanders on Long Island. Dylan DeMello spoke as well and says everyone's going to need to step up without Dylan Samberg back on the blue line tonight.
Whoever's in that role, obviously step up, and everybody, maybe doing a little bit more. Obviously, Sammy's been a huge part of this team this year. He's made great strides in all facets of the game, so he's been amazing for us, a rock back there, so steady. So, we'll miss him tonight, but we got guys that can fill in the spot, and, we're confident with the group we got.
Dylan, does it feel like that you are playing playoff games right now in terms of like the closeness of the games, the intensity? Last 2 games being an example, 2 teams are out of the playoffs and that they were very tight games.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think you're getting everybody's best game by this time of year. Desperate teams, teams that are trying to fight for the playoffs and get in the playoffs. So. We know we're getting everybody's best game. That has to raise our level, and we're trying to get our game right too. So, we've done a lot of good things. There's some things that we can clean up too in the last couple of games. But we just got to continue to stay with our game, continue to push, and continue to try to elevate in all areas.
All right, so there's Dylan DeMello. DeMello was also asked if the players are feeling a little extra pressure because Chevy's on the trip this week heading into the deadline on Friday.
I think Chevy's been on every trip of the year pretty much, except for maybe 1 or 2. So I think he's got a pretty good pulse on what we have and what he feels we may need. I think he's one of the more diligent GMs out there. He's always, around us, and I think he's always trying to see how we can make the team better. So, it's just because it's trade deadline, it's nothing really new for us.
The Jets did see the Islanders about a month ago. I guess it was February 7th. Actually, that was our last WST game of the month. Last game heading into the break, where the Jets helped WST go 5-0 up in Section 316. So it hasn't been too long since they saw the Islanders. Here's DeMello on tonight's opponent.
Well, we know this team from playing them over the years. They haven't changed much stylistically in regards to being a stingy team, teams that are hard to play against, team that forechecks well, skates well, and competes really hard. So we expect the same. They're fighting for a playoff spot. Obviously they lost last night, so we expect a really good effort from them tonight.
Fellow on the Islanders, Cole Perfetti also spoke before the game, and he talked about tonight's game and the opponent who they just saw about a month ago.
They're a good team. They work really hard, and they don't give up much. They got some high end players, and they kind of wait for you to make a mistake, and they'll make you pay. And so we got to be patient tonight. And they're going to be, they don't give up much, so it's going to be a challenge to get in there and get some quality looks. But last game was a tight one too. But I think it's going to be a good game tonight. But just got to be patient, I think.
You mentioned that tight game last game, Cole. Are you feeling like every game since coming back from Four Nations has been that playoff intensity now? Yeah,
for sure. I mean, kind of almost down the home stretch. Got 21 games left, so I think there's, teams are pushing for the playoffs. Obviously we're top of the league, so teams are always gunning for us, and we've definitely noticed since the break that it's been, tight. There's not much there, and not a lot of room to make plays, and it's starting to, the intensity's picking up and the play's picking up. So it's fun to play in those games. It's getting us prepared, and I think we're, slowly getting better with it and with that speed and with that, kind of playoff style. So it's, these games they're all crucial coming down the stretch here. So it's fun to play them.
Good stuff from John Liu. Nice to see John on the road with the club ahead of the trade deadline. Perfetti also talked about the power play, which is, for the first time all season, hit the skids a little bit over their last 16.
I mean, obviously, we haven't scored in a handful of games, and I think with our power play, we came out of the gate so hot, and, we've been really dominant as a power play up to this point. I think the last couple of games, I don't think it's for, it's not a lack of, attempts or effort or, I think we're getting the chances, we're getting the looks. Goalies are making good saves. Obviously, penalty kills are seeing what we're doing, and we're having a lot of success leading up to these past couple of games. So they're bringing their A game, and that's what happens when you're at the top of the leaderboard. Everyone's going to be bringing their A game for you, and penalty kills are definitely stepping up and playing us in different ways. A couple teams have given both units different looks on the fly. So teams are doing different things, and now it's up to us to adjust. And I think, even last game we had a couple late in the game, but we had some great looks, we had some great chances. Puck just didn't go in. That's going to happen, but as long as we're, sticking with it, like you said, evolving and picking up things that the other teams are doing and seeing where, we can get better, then I think this is only going to make us better.
All right, so there's Cole Perfetti. Now, Cole's been here for a minute, but obviously hasn't been through many trade deadlines. Here's what Perfetti had to say about the feeling for him and around the team heading into Friday's 2 p.m. deadline.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that's out of your control. Just show up every day ready to go, and you never know what's going to happen with this next week coming up. But at the same time, I mean, we have a job to do. We're focused on each individual day, each individual game, and whatever happens, and we got to be ready to go. And something, like I said, something that's out of our control. So don't really want to spend too much time focusing on that, because I don't want to waste energy on something that I have no control over. So just trying to come to the rink every day and play the best hockey that we can as a team, and move on, go from there.
Thinking about it for the young forward. Now, of course, Cole's in a very different space than he was a year ago at this time. A year ago was having a tough time staying in the lineup, was spending some time in the press box, and now he's a regular, continues to be productive, and is really clicking more and more every game with Nikolai Ehlers on that second line. Perfetti talked about just how his game has grown this season as opposed to maybe last year where he was struggling a little bit at this time.
I think just becoming more of an all-around 200-foot guy, working on the defensive game. I think, I've touched on it in the past of being able to adapt based on the game, and if you're not impacting the scoreboard, then you're impacting in other ways, whether it's the forecheck, getting into guys blocking shots, whatever it is, trying to just adapt. And I think that's something that I've, like personally and as a team, I think we've just been, slowly getting better and better as a team. We're that's the thing with our group. I think we obviously have great depth, but I think we learn on the fly pretty good, and we see something in our game that we don't like, and I think we do a pretty good job getting that out of our game and getting back to what makes us successful. So as a team, that's what we're doing right now down the road is just trying to get better every single day. Look at obviously we don't like to lose 2 in a row, and so learn from our mistakes in those last couple of games and see where we can get better and just keep evolving and to be the best team come playoff time.
All right, so there's Cole Perfetti, some good stuff from him. 6:30 puck drop tonight. Jets and the New York Islanders. They'll then move on to Philly and New Jersey before rounding out the week Sunday with a late afternoon game against the Carolina Hurricanes, who are actually in Detroit tonight. We'll hit busy night tonight in the National Hockey League. We'll get to all of tonight's games in the Cool Bet lines a little later on. But a big thanks to our friends at Princess Auto, synonymous with Winnipeg. Princess Auto was founded here in the Peg, headquartered here in Winnipeg, and is now coast to coast, but with 3 locations to serve you, featuring the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new is at Princess Auto. Pop down and see them, Panet Road, Portage Avenue West, or at their Brandon location. And, of course, you can always shop online 24/7, 365 at princessauto.com. And a little birdie told me a couple days ago, keep your ears out tomorrow, the Canada Day celebration presented by Princess Auto at Princess Auto Stadium. Sounds like the acts are going to be announced for that. And obviously last year was a great first year to do it, and it continues. We'll find out more about that tomorrow. Speaking of great Manitoba companies, Wallace & Wallace has been the leaders in fencing and overhead doors since 1946. If your property needs the security and protection of a new fence, or if winter's done a number on your old one, give them a call. They can help you with vinyl, ornamental, welded wire, chain link, or wood fences. And if you need a new garage door, make sure to talk to Wallace & Wallace. They've got the largest selection of overhead doors in the city, which means one perfectly to match your home and add value to it at the same time. 452-2700 is the number. Wallace & Wallace would love to come down and give you a free estimate. You could also check them out online at wallacefences.com or pop down and see them at their showroom on Lawson Crescent off of Kenniston. Spring is just around the corner, everybody. That, of course, means graduations. That, of course, means weddings. Guys, if you need to step up your menswear game, head on down to F Apparel with the best in custom clothing and custom suits, starting at just $400. They've also got a great promo for grads right now. If you're graduating or have a grad in your family in 2025, pop on down. Suits starting at $429, and they will give you a free shirt and a free tie for the graduation special. And, of course, wedding parties. If you're in a wedding, make sure to talk to the fellas at F about a special discount for wedding parties when you get your suits for the big day there. F Apparel is at 190 Smith Street downtown. Pop by and see them, or check them out online at that's EPHapparel.com for all their promos right now and to set up a time to come in for a fitting. And, hey, a lot of talk about the tariffs, which suck and are going to be a real drain on us. Obviously, when you're making your choices, you're going to want to keep Canadian. And if you're thinking about whiskey, Canadian Club is the standard when it comes for Canadian whiskey. Since 1848, Canadian Club, Canada's favorite, oldest Canadian whiskey, available at your local Manitoba liquor marts. And keep your eyes out soon for a new launch of Canadian Club and Ginger Ale in cans. Those will be picked up at your local beer vendor. Canadian Club, the full display, all the CC products available at your local Manitoba liquor marts. All right, it's Hammer time. Let's welcome Jeff Hamilton into the program. Hammer, what's good, buddy? How are you?
Not bad, Huss. The thing that's happening in my life right now is the thing that's happening is grabbing the mic, obviously, as I often do. I actually grabbed it already and put it back down. I thought Remo was going to make a comment, and then I was texting. And anyways, the new thing in my life, and I'm going to sound, I like being late to the party, right? Everyone likes showing up fashionably late to the party, but I am super late to this party, Huss. I got an air fryer recently. I've been trying out new recipes. I don't think that I'm ever going to order wings from a restaurant again, just because the air fryer is that good at them. And I've just been marveling at how amazing this kitchen appliance is. And no, I actually wore a badge of honor not buying one during COVID, as that was one of the many things that people bought. But man, do I look stupid now. And it's been a terrific week because of it.
Now, when you're doing wings, like, do you actually get like are these wings that you just get the frozen wings and you just throw them in, or are you actually getting, I assume they sell wings on their own? Not a very experienced grocery shopper here, but
so
where you're seasoning them yourself
in a cart,
is this
carton or a bag? Yeah.
Is this Jeannie Bouchard on the box?
This is your wings you buy from Costco. You ever been to Costco, Huss? Amazing, man.
I went there once.
So they sell real wings, and they separate, the drum and whatnot.
Okay.
But they're not frozen, so they're thawed out, but you just put them, you can put stuff in frozen. I haven't tried that yet. I'm still very new to it, but I put them in. So what I do is I love the no free ads, the hot wings that Silver Heights restaurant does, but they call them double dip because they put them back in the deep fryer after they put hot sauce on them, right? I don't really like saucy wings, so I've been replicating that. So I've been putting them in there just 12 minutes in, and then I dress them with hot sauce, and I throw them back in under the max crisp for 3 minutes. Huss, I've been living in a world, man, where I come home late at night or in the evening, and I'm thinking wings are an impossible thing to have. 20 minutes on one side in the oven, flip over 20 minutes, do the same thing. And
not
I'm
as good in the oven either. We all know that.
Insane. So this has changed my life. It's changed my day-to-day. And yeah, I'm just really excited about it, about figuring it out finally.
I'm happy for you. Some big changes with Jeff Hamilton. Let's talk about this hockey club, the Winnipeg Jets. How many big changes do you think may happen up until 2 p.m. on Friday? It's interesting. We've heard the Jets have been taking some big swings. I mean, according to Elliott, some of their swings may not be available to them. And then others that said, hey, with what this team's done so far this year, this is maybe some smaller ads around the periphery. As we sit here, 3 days before the deadline, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking the Jets are trying to add something notable, significant. As you mentioned, Elliott Friedman, I think that's a typical situation, but I think even more so this year where the Jets are in on it. They probably feel like they're, really in on it given their position in the standings. And I think that they're, trying to get it done. Will that happen? We'll have to wait and see. I mean, there's a lot of teams out there. Apparently Dallas and Edmonton are super hungry too. So you have to compete with those teams as well who want to improve their rosters. I think the Jets could add a handful of pieces. I mean, there's lots of names that have been tossed out for them. I think there's potential for a big blockbuster. I think there's potential for tiny pieces. I'd be curious exactly what the Jets want to do, right? I think they want to add significant pieces. I think they want to bolster their lineup. I know they want to do it with the right players. I mean, everybody wants to do it with the right players. But what I mean by that is they want to make sure that these players are a right fit, play the style of game in which the Jets play, right? I mean, I'd mentioned this on the last week, couple weeks ago, 3 weeks too. They want to be heavier. They want to be more physical. They want to be tougher up the middle of the ice. They want a nasty defenseman. They want experience. All these things that the Jets have in some way, but probably could be bigger, could be nastier, and certainly could have a bit more playoff experience in the room. So, I mean, could that be in a big swing and try to find, somebody who's going to knock all the Jets fans' socks off? Yeah, potentially. And I think that, as I mentioned, I think the Jets are in not a prime position, but are in a better position than even last year based on the fact that they have the best odds of winning the cup. They're the best team in the National Hockey League, all those things, right? That they were close to last year, but you could see some of the cracks in the armor. That being said, I still think there's going to be moves to be made. You need to find depth. You need to find, again, some of that sandpaper and nasty of the playoffs that always comes with the playoffs. But I see, I'm not throwing any names out there right now, Huss, as you haven't really necessarily asked for that, but I do see some action for sure.
Well, I'll throw a name out. We've already been talking about him, and the Jets are in Long Island tonight, and it's Brock Nelson. And to me, this is a guy that makes so much sense. Listen, would I rather have a guy with some term on the contract? For sure. I'm not as worried about a 16 no trade list because there is no contract after this year. If I'm a guy like that and I get the opportunity to go to the number one team in the league with a couple guys that I just played in the Four Nations, I'm into it. And, we know that Lou is loath to put up the white flag, but their loss last night to the Rangers pretty much put them out of it, and the Jets can put the rest of the dirt on that grave tonight if they do get a win. Thoughts on Nelson? And I guess it's more the spot, because we've heard, the Jets are in on Rantanen, and there was Brock Besser. I still have a hard time wrapping my head around what happens to the roster if they add a winger as opposed to a center where there's a pretty clear need. I mean, the wingers right now, certainly in the top two lines, been pretty productive, and I don't imagine they're really looking to move those guys out of any of their spots.
Yeah, it's a good point. It might be out of what you get. You know what I mean? I mean, everyone's looking to bolster up the middle. Of course, that's, center's a prime position. As far as Brock Nelson goes, I think he'd be at the top of your wish list, right? Much like a Sean Monahan last year, that brings somebody in who obviously knows the position, can certainly play with skilled wingers, as that would be the case on the second line, and you'd be able to move Nemestikov out to the fourth line, right? And that would be reminiscent, if you will, of the 2018 run when Brian Little was playing in that spot, right? These are the situations that you kind of envision as a team if you want to go deep, right? I mean, you want to get better. You also want to honor the team that, the teammates that you have, the players that you have that have gotten you to this point. But Brock Nelson, would bring it all together. I mean, that's the same reason why Ryan O'Reilly was wanting to bring in somebody who already knows the job, can do the job and do it super well. But I don't know if Brock Nelson might get, snagged by somebody else, right? I look at the Islanders too. You said winger, you don't like wingers, Haas, but what about Anthony Duclair on that line? That Jets like term. He's a big guy. He's obviously a winger. $3.5 million of a cap hit. I'm not saying that he's unbelievable, but he might be someone that the Jets are interested in. But I look at this team, and if they can't get, the Rantanens, of the world, or the Brock Nelsons, or, Brad Marchands, or the, all these other names that have kind of popped up as available in a sense. I mean, available, I use lightly with guys like Marchand, but when you look at what Boston's doing, they're not doing well, right? They need to figure things out too. So, but I see if it's not, a big name, then it's, someone like an Anthony Duclair, somebody like Alec Martinez from Chicago. We know how much the Jets seem to like to do business with Chicago.
Oh, Remis' favorite player
from Chicago. You know what I mean? Like those are potentials. Riley, I wouldn't rule the Jets out of Riley Smith. Also, another guy who's, been tossed out there. Look, the Jets need, they need scoring. I know they got plenty of it, but you can never lack scoring. And whether it's moving a guy, having a guy play on a third or a fourth line, or just, moving guys down, that's what you want. You want that depth. You want that ability. So, there's been names thrown out there. Ricard Raquel is another guy, but I think he's one of those that is not necessarily wanting to come to Winnipeg. Or at least that's a lot of the buzz around his name. But I'm sure the Jets are running up against this, but I'm sure the Jets are sure other teams are saying this to other clubs outside of Winnipeg. A lot of it with what the Jets have as far as picks and prospects. That stuff talks. The other thing too, Huss, I find that, and I'm not trying to knock Winnipeg, is I think if you're anybody, whether you have a couple years left on your contract or you're up, in the summer, there's a lot of benefits to being in Winnipeg for the next couple seasons. They don't look like they're slowing down. They look like they're in their championship window, and we'll see how long they can crack that open for. But at the same time, you also need to be smart, and you don't want to get too wild in these occasions. The one last thing I'll say is teams don't seem to be doing players as dirty as they used to be. I know a lot of teams, and dirty is not the right word, but I know a lot of teams, a lot of players, have no trade or no moves or limited. It seems like everybody gets one nowadays. But even without them, teams, want to do right by their players. They want to, whether Winnipeg can sell other players given where they are in the standings, or if other players just don't want to, move to Winnipeg and live there for a few years, that's just life in the NHL. But I'll tell you what, the Jets are certainly doing their best to shop themselves to other teams, because there's, while they seem to be in a little bit of a slump right now, very minor, this team is exciting. This team looks very primed to make a good run here. And any player would be lucky, I think, to join the Jets at this point in the time in their history.
Yeah, listen, I mean, I'm with you. And if we're talking about, Alexiaks or Ristolainens, those sort of players on the back end that have a year or two a term, which I think is kind of perfect for Winnipeg. Yeah. I think they would do everything they could to get. If a guy's on an expiring contract, much like we've seen before, I mean, even if Winnipeg was the first team that he put on his 6-team no-trade list, you're talking about coming to the number one team in the league that has a legitimate shot at doing something special in the playoffs, which
best goalie in the world,
which can only help your plot when it comes to July 1st if you can go on a long playoff run.
Ask Kevin Hayes. It didn't work out here for him, but it certainly worked out for him when he signed the dotted line late. It doesn't even matter. There's
imagine
lots of
what that would have been
that.
if they'd gone for 3 rounds or all the way to the Cup final. So that's why I think about a guy like Brock Nelson, even if it was never in the cards for him. I'm going to a top team in the West. I got to live in the Delta for a couple months and hopefully longer if we do well in the playoffs. To me, that's an easy yes. And the funny thing about Nelson is, and again, I'm not really going to get into the possibility if you get him right now to re-sign him. I think so much of that will depend on his experience here with the organization, the team, how the team does. But it is important to note the guy's from Warroad. I mean, if he was traded here, I think you'd have a large contingent of Nelsons wearing white at Canada Life Center. And that might be something. And then you mix in with the other Minnesota guys and guys like an Iafallo that have really kind of found a bit of a home here, although doesn't have a contract for next year. And maybe that is more of a possibility. But I guess just to the short, the here and now, to me, like all these wingers that have been mentioned, would I love to have them on my team? Absolutely. Do I think you could improve a spot here or there? For sure. I just think that the obvious need, and this is not a new conversation here with this club, is again, the 2C, because with all due respect to Vlad Nemestikov, I'm just not sure that I have the confidence, and I'm not sure that Chevy has the confidence that the group of Vlad, Ehlers, and Perfetti, a pretty small line on by any standard, would be able to really thrive through 4 rounds of the Stanley Cup playoffs. And a 6'4" guy with playoff experience that can score like Nelson, to me, would be just a perfect complement to those guys. And that's why I wouldn't be surprised if they're a little more aggressive, especially if they can get this win tonight and make it very clear that the Islanders are going nowhere.
Yeah, I think that's the exact scenario, Huss, that the Jets management is playing in their minds right now. I mean, ton of respect to Vlad Nemestikov and what he's been able to do, and certainly been able to fill that spot better than well. I mean, look where the Jets are in the standings, right? However, there are moments in seemingly every game, Huss, that you kind of get a reminder why Nemestikov isn't a top 6 forward, right? It's finish around the net. It's not effort. It's not defensive play. It's not necessarily being in the wrong position, because I would argue he's in the right position quite often. It's that when he gets, threaded a pass in and around the net, I mean, half of them are jumping over his stick, or he's not getting a handle on him, or he's not, that's the difference between a top 6 and a bottom 6 forward, right? Is finish around the net. And that, again, I don't want to introduce a bunch of negatives about him because he has been playing well, but that has to be an area that, it has to be, of course, it's an area that the Jets want to improve on and they want to add to. They saw the same thing. They've been trying to do that the last few years. It's just who's available and again, who wants to come to Winnipeg. But that being said, if it doesn't work out and they aren't able to get that 2C, I don't see Vlad Nemestikov as a horrible option. I think that team needs to take on an identity in the playoffs. I think they need to play tougher. It's great that their confidence is better now, right? After, I know they've been in a bit of a slump here with the rest of the team, but they were firing, on all cylinders, obviously, for quite some time there, and we're each on their own, collective point streak. So we know they can score. We know they can generate offense. It's just, as you mentioned, when the playoff starts and we get closer to the playoffs, the level of play ramps up and you need to find that next level. While that second line again has been beyond serviceable for a top 6 in Winnipeg, or for the Jets. I do think that you want to be able to get your other lines scoring and generating offense, and you can do just that by improving that 2C spot. I mean, again, whether it's Brock Nelson or somebody else, you want somebody in there, and you wonder why someone isn't looking at that area. Someone who might have a year left in their contract or might be a pending free agent this summer and go, that's a wide open spot, and why their agent isn't telling them that's been not just a wide open spot, it's been a wide open spot now for some time. And nobody's been able to kind of come in and grab onto it. So, we'll see what happens here. There's still plenty of time ahead of Friday's deadline, Huss. So we'll see if that magic can still be wielded here by Kevin Cheveldayoff.
I see Johnny Bender, and Johnny, you might have missed this. One guy that I haven't heard about and think would be a great asset to Winnipeg would be Mario Ferraro from the Sharks. Actually,
Jets have had interest in him in the past. For sure.
Him earlier. Like he's a guy that I think would be a nice fit and an upgrade. We've talked about Jamie Alexiak, who brings, a massive frame, playoff experience, a little bit more nasty than the 6'7" guy, although credit to Logan Stanley for going with Deloriers. I mean, that's not an easy guy to say yes to. Mm-hmm. And he did on Saturday, which I'm sure earned him some respect in the room. And then, of course, there's Rasmus Ristolainen. I will say this, and this ship had sailed for me earlier. But the dream ad was Rasmus Andersson from Calgary. With where Calgary is right now, I think it would be very difficult for them to make that move. But it was funny. I was listening to 960.
He loves it in Calgary too.
Yeah, and I think that he is a guy that I think they foresee re-signing and keeping him beyond. So, I mean, if something could happen with that would be amazing. The reason we haven't talked about it is
Colton Parayko wasn't on your list?
I mean, listen, I would certainly take Colton Parayko. I think that he is at 6'5" for another, is it 3 years?
I think it's 3 more years.
Yeah. Listen, if you told me that the Jets' top pairing would be Colton Parayko and Josh Morrissey for the next 3 years, I think we could safely say that would be a real nice upgrade. In that scenario, DeMello probably runs to your third pairing. And we know what Dylan DeMello does for everybody that he plays with. I think you're getting the best of both worlds in that, while DeMello may play a little less, I think he, immediately can boost the guy that he's playing with. And I don't think they're interested in touching Sandberg and Pionk with the season that they've had together this year. But of all those blue liners, who do you think makes the most sense?
4 years on Parayko.
Oh, another 4 years on it. So, I mean, again, you're taking on some significant term. The other thing, we've talked a lot about, where's Braden Shen going to go? Where's Parayko going to go? Don't look now, but the Blues have been red hot coming out of the break and have barged right back into this race with Vancouver and Calgary. And it's not out of you could make a trade with the player on St. Louis and be playing them in the first round of the playoffs if they keep going right now. And Binnington obviously feeling himself right now after his performance at Four Nations.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know who I would ideal. I mean, who wouldn't want to have Colton Parayko with Josh Morrissey? I mean, that was a great duo on Team Canada, right? So that seems like it would be a dream matchup, and $6.5 million is only going to look better. Maybe not with time, with Colton Parayko getting older, obviously, but when you look at the cap the way it's going to rise in the next, whatever few years here, that's super cheap. To me, I think, I think you just want to bring in some toughness on defense, and I don't mean like, oh, put in a third pairing, big body. I think you want to bring somebody who can clear the net, somebody who can be, someone who can be Logan Stanley but way better. Essentially, you know what I mean? Like Logan Stanley seems to have a, I don't even mind Logan Stanley. I just if you want to upgrade your defense and you want to make sure, he's likely probably the one to come out. You want to make sure that you have some muscle replacing him, right? Somebody who again can clear the front of the net, who has a strong first pass, and can play within your system. Whether that's a younger, player or if that's an older, more veteran player, we'll wait and see. But I do think you want to find somebody who can again. Net front presence and first pass have to be the priorities, I think, on D.
Yeah. Okay, here's the question that I posed to the chat earlier today when we were kicking around. We know that there's a need to improve the defense, and there is this hole at forward, in my opinion, at the second line center if you're truly going to be a cup contending or a cup winning team. You only have so many assets. I mean, we talk about big swings, and I mean, listen, there's lots of things that are possible if you want to completely empty the cupboards. But based on what is available, if they have to choose between one major ad, and it is between a second line center or a defenseman that potentially could play with Josh Morrissey on a regular basis, where do you think they feel their need is greater at?
You're saying a top pairing right-hand defenseman or a second-line centerman?
Well, call it a Parayko, a Rasmus Ristolainen. I mean, a guy that's going to basically be paired up with Josh Morrissey, that would move DeMello down, like a guy that is a clear-cut top four defenseman, or a Brock Nelson type of guy that could come in and significantly change your second line. Like where is the value proposition for the Jets? Where do they gain more? What ends up giving them a better chance to win?
I think the second line centerman.
I
don't know
too.
why. I say that hesitantly because I feel the Jets would probably think a right hand number one D man and pushing everybody else on that side down one spot would be probably in their best interest, right? I look at the goalie between the pipes. And I just look at that second C rounding things together, Huss, bringing everything together on that's an exciting group for sure. And, to my point about the right-handed D and pushing everyone down, that's the same view I see, obviously, for second line centerman and having a Vlad Nemestikov on your fourth line, right? Maybe bringing in somebody else like an Anthony Duclair and having a real solid fourth line. Like, to me, that, team defense can make up for it. I think you need the scoring aspect. You can't have that second line go dark in the playoffs. You can't have the entire weight of the world put on Scheifele's top line. Now, they're going to have to carry a lot of it. Obviously, they're the best line on the team. But I do think you need to find that second line centerman because there's just too many question marks on that line for me. Yeah, Cole Perfetti is playing a lot better than he had been earlier, but there was a time in the year where Cole Perfetti maybe shouldn't even have been in the lineup with the way he was playing, right? So that's the nervous part, I think, in this whole thing. You can shelter. I mean, you can't shelter your third pairing defense all playoffs, but you can do a pretty good job of limiting their minutes and riding some of your horses. I think you need that centerman to bring out Cole Perfetti's game, to bring out Nikolai Ehlers' game, and to really cement the forecheck, and just, that's where I think the Jets are going to kill teams if they can get a full on attack, forecheck, play strong, play hard, and then rely on, their team defense and their goalie. It's not saying that not having a right-hand defenseman, somehow this defense sucks. This defense is doing just fine. I just feel like that second line centerman is just round everything together.
Just looking at the chat and lots of great stuff coming in. By the way, we're pushing 500 again. Hit that thumbs up, please, if you haven't already. It's literally the least you can do. And make sure you're subscribed to the channel as well. Ola Mike says, remember, this team is built for regular season style of hockey. If they don't get bigger and stronger for playoffs, it will be the same story as last year. I'll say one thing, Mike. If anyone thinks that the Jets lost to the Colorado Avalanche last year because they weren't tough enough, they did not watch the series. The Jets were not one, but 2 or 3 steps behind the Avalanche. They could not handle their speed. They could not handle their forecheck. It made just getting out of their own end a disaster. And listen, I do believe that they do need to be more physical and stronger to handle what would be running through 4 rounds of the playoffs if you're going to get to the top. But I mean, let's not make complete revisionist history. The Jets didn't get out toughed by the Colorado Avalanche. The Avalanche were just better in literally every aspect of it. And let's hope that that's a learning lesson. I mean, Vegas, I think you could probably make that argument a little bit more the previous year. I mean, there were some really tight, tough games there. And, that is what Vegas was built on. And I don't disagree that if you're talking about making a Stanley Cup contender, that is it. But that Colorado team last year wasn't pushing the Jets around. It was skating circles around them for 4 games. And unfortunately, that's why it ended the way that it did. The one thing we've talked about some of the bigger ads, Jeff, but I think it's inevitable that there'll be a player or two that might not necessarily be automatically even in the lineup. I mean, they could actually be depth pieces. And I wouldn't be surprised if that kind of physicality, size, toughness, that might be a real focus of the Jets on those secondary ads outside of what they might do for the 2 sort of bigger swings in the holes that we just talked about.
Yeah, like I said, I think there's 2 things that they'll be focusing on with those, extra ads, if you will, and that's physicality and experience. That's why I bring up guys like Craig Smith. Craig Smith's been signing 1-year deals, the last couple of years, right? He's on a team now that isn't making the playoffs. He might be somebody who has that experience, right? Knows how to, support his teammates in a tough time. I'm not saying the Jets don't have that. Of course they have that. It's just always good to add people who have been there, done that, because the playoffs is a beast in and of itself. And again, physicality. I think that's the most important part. If you're going to have to put somebody who, again, you got to find the right kind of guy, right? You got to find the guy who can play your style of hockey. And that's why you have scouts. That's why you have advisors outside of scouts that are advising the scouts. And that's why you do your homework. You try to find players who you feel are built for your team, and that's your job at this time of the year, is to complement with that. You don't just take who you think is the best player and add them. I mean, the Jets look even with the top free agents, right? You look at the top free agents and you try to find out who would fit your model best, who could come into your locker room and play the style in which that you want to play, and then you want those calming voices. Right? That's what the experience brings. It brings a sense of calm that when you look over at someone's stall, he's not freaking out or he's not, whatever. Again, been there, done that kind of mentality. And the Jets have experience, but they could certainly use, a bit more of that as they get into this. Season.
And that is why, as much as I'm sitting here talking about how much I love Brock Nelson, I'm kind of doing that knowing that it's unlikely that if Nashville's treating Ryan O'Reilly like he has a full no move, knowing he's got term left on his deal, whether he's signing up. But man, if he had an openness to doing that, I mean, that's the player that literally checks every box. Oh, and has also been a guy that, went all the way, won the Conn Smythe and won a Stanley Cup with the St. Louis Blues on a team that did not have a bunch of guys that were winners already, that were Stanley Cup champs. I mean, he really led them there. And, obviously the Nashville's fascinating right now, Jeff, in that, they had such high hopes going into this season, and they spent significant money on Marchessault and Brady Shea and Steven Stamkos. And while I don't think any of those guys will be on the move, where they are does give Barry Trotz some tough answers to where his hockey club is right now, but also some opportunities to significantly change things. So, I mean, listen, O'Reilly would be at a top of the wish list of most teams that had one of those needs. And again, it does get a little complicated with how Nashville has said they're going to handle Ryan, and the way that he came to the club, even though he doesn't have a no trade. But holy smokes, when you go down, all of that, and talk about something that I know it's tough to put a number on, but you'd be naive to think that experience doesn't matter at all. man, would he be a pickup that would be a dream ad for the Winnipeg Jets, even if he didn't have another year on his contract.
The sounds of it, it coming out of Nashville, Huss, is that they don't buy into this year. It sounds like they want it. They think that they like their team. Yeah, kind of like run it back again next season, right? And hopefully have different results. I just see that pickup though, and it reminds me of Wally Buono, where I'd rather get rid of a player a year too early than a year too late. And when you look at like Jonathan Marchessault, you look at Steven Stamkos, yeah, they've had flashes of late, but it seems like, their better days are behind them. And you could probably make the same argument for Ryan O'Reilly, but to your point, he brings all those tangibles and intangibles, including that leadership aspect, that experience, performing on the biggest stage, right? Because you hear about it, you see the videos, you see guys speechless at the end after winning the Stanley Cup. It's not just the fact that they got there and won it. Obviously, that's a big part of it. It's the journey that it took there, and the physical journey it takes, and the mental journey it takes. There's players, you get to the second round and you wonder, how is it possible to go, further than this mentally, right? And then you throw on the physical challenges. That's really the beast that is the NHL playoffs, and that's why it's the greatest playoff, in my opinion, run to a championship, hardest you can get, just because of that, right? The fact that it's so grueling both physically and mentally, and that's why you want experience. You want guys who have been there, again, have done that, and can share that experience with your team, and again share that calmness that comes with that experience.
Jeff Hamilton of the Winnipeg Free Press with us. Hammer, before we go, been very quiet on the Bomber front these days. I was just like asking, what are you hearing? Anything percolating right now as the team still looks to fill a few holes, probably getting a whole bunch of free agents that haven't played in the CFL before, and get ready for camp?
Yeah, I started making some phone calls the other day, House, just to see if their phones were still on. Just see if this was still happening. You guys still, yeah, exactly. I think what you see is what you get. This is the team that's going to go into the 2025 season. And, like I've said before, I don't know, do they look worse than last year? Yeah, I guess so. When you look at some of the subtractions, that being said, the Bombers were supposed to take a step back last year, right? They had a slow start. Some younger guys, came into their own by the end of the season, and they ripped off a bunch of wins, right, to secure the West Division again. So, I think they're going to be in tougher this year. I mean, we're all looking at Edmonton and wondering how that's going to work out. Personally, I still think they have quarterback issues, but I do think the teams in and around the Bombers have gotten better. But we'll see. I wouldn't rule out Winnipeg. I think they still have the horses. They still have guys that have made. That again made giant steps last year, and will be looked at to be making giant steps this year. And we'll see how it all unfolds. But it's hard to deny when you look at some of the players that left. The Liam Dobsons, the Terrell Fords, Kenny Lawler, of course. It's hard to look at a team that struggled at times last year and couldn't get it done in the final. It feels like it's going to be a tougher ride this year, but we'll see.
Well, we continue to count down to training camp, the season, but right now the focus is on the local hockey team and, of course, the trade deadline and their quest for first place in the Central, in the West, and dare I say potentially the National Hockey League. Just before you go, still lots of air fryer talk. T. Will has said, tip for Hammer, try some homemade pierogies in your air fryer. Welcome to Flavor Country. Interesting. Have you made anything in this thing other than wings?
Yes, I made pork chops as well. I've made, grilled vegetables. What I find to be an awesome part of it as well is the reheat option.
That's basically what I use mine for.
Like, it's amazing. Like,
if you have fries, like if you go to like Daily Burger, for instance, and they give you like the order of fries is this massive bag.
Oh, I made fries too, by the way.
You could never eat them all. You throw those things back in afterwards for a couple minutes, and it's literally like they just came out of the restaurant.
Yeah. So is that what you've been using? Have you been using your air fryer for storage or for heating up food or what? Like just to keep your stuff? Like
basically reheating. Great for Chinese food too. Stuff that you might not normally eat because it would be a little.
What about
soggy.
taquito? What about taquitos you forgot to eat the night before?
I usually don't buy enough. I don't buy quantities and stuff. I just get a couple to take down if I'm going to, or a dog. But I am quite intrigued about things like vegetables, or like I've even seen things you throw in the Ninja like a steak or a pork chop.
So my sister was telling me the other day that I forget what she said the size of steak was, but she'd done this before and she'd seen it before she did it, that you throw in like this steak frozen, like frozen out of the freezer. And I think that's part of it, right? I think
right out of M&M Meats, pretty
much
the freezer
or any other, or your freezer. And then throw it in, and like 15 minutes later, it's the perfect medium rare. Anyways, I'm still very new into this. I don't want to talk with authority
like an expert. Yes,
like an expert, but that being said, I will be taking the time to learn it, and I will come back with some feedback. There's also a dehydrate button on there, but anyway, the thing that I'm marveled about is obviously the wings, and particularly, it's a healthier option, right? You're not dumping it in oil. You're not, whatever. So, lots of good coming out of it. So I'll report back, but man, what a life changer.
Lucas says, I've had frozen steaks air fried. It's still so good and juicy somehow. And I'm with Johnny Bender. Where's Johnny? He misses Daily Burger. Hey, it's still great. Who is it that just said, oh no, it was Jets fan 24. Pizza reheating, A1 in the air fryer.
Done that as well.
Certainly you've done that.
Done that as well. Yeah, that's clutch.
Hey, listen, tomorrow, show 1000 from me and Reem. Special thanks to you, because I don't know. We don't have stats on this, but I would imagine that from show 1 to show 1000, if you're not number 1 in appearances, you would be amongst a couple or 2 or 3 guys that would be right neck and neck. So, and then I think if we add on CFL 110, I think it probably puts you as the most frequent guest on WST since our inception. So,
goosebumps.
Thank you very much on that. And hey, we've got a long extended show on Friday. We're going to start at 11. We're going to be talking about all the deals. So, if you want to jump on at some point, depending on your schedule, it'll be an extended trade deadline extravaganza party. So you're always welcome. But thank you again for everything.
Well, Huss, I'll definitely see you on Friday. I'm already working with your producer on it. Remo, to you as well. Thank you guys. Thank you for 1,000 shows. Man, that happened quick.
That's crazy. Yeah, $9.99 today.
That's amazing. I've been so lucky to be part of this show. I've been so lucky to be part of milestones of this show, and I'm certainly lucky to call you guys friends. So this has just been an incredible experience. Good on you guys. It's so awesome you kept it going. I've appreciated you, bringing me into the fold for CFL coverage as well. And I would be remiss, obviously, if I didn't mention the community, right? The community of people who ultimately make this show what it is, and their support allows you to keep doing this, allows you to keep living the life, allows you to keep, and you know what, I say that knowing that you appreciate them just as much as they appreciate you. And I think that's a really important part of this business, of this industry. So thank you to them as well for contributing, right? It's amazing we were living in this world before streaming and whatever. And it almost feels like, we've been doing it forever, and it wasn't the other way where we were on the radio and nobody could bother us, right? That seems kind of ridiculous now.
No, it is a far better place. And listen, we do love the chatters and everyone that's with us, although I'll love you a lot more if we can get a few more likes and get this show over 200 right now. We're at 171 and we're almost 500. So
I'll hop on and I'll click it.
Perfect. You give us a like too.
I'm already subscribing though. So
perfect. Hey, well, listen, hopefully we'll catch up later on this week. Should be an interesting few days. Enjoy the game tonight, Jeff, and we'll look forward to everything else you got cooking over at the Winnipeg Free Press as well. Thanks for doing this, buddy, and we'll talk to you soon.
Always a pleasure, my friend. Take care.
Good stuff. There it is. Hammer time with Jeff Hamilton on Winnipeg Sports Talk. The chat has been amazing today, and Hammer's always a popular individual. Corey May, Hammer has always been well-spoken. Absolutely. Sometimes I wonder how he's not a TV talking head other than just a great writer over at the Free. But it is definitely our game. It is so great to have him part of our crew here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. All right. We will get to the cool bet lines. We've got a busy game tonight in the National Hockey League. I cooked up a WST parlay. I'm interested to see the number on that. We'll check that out in just a couple of minutes. And we are going to have, we had that great conversation with Ken Bentley about the women's volleyball last week. We're going to go a different direction with a newbie coming up in just a minute. But hey, shout out to our friends at Royal Sports. We're all waiting to see what Kevin Cheveldayoff does at the deadline. And then we can lock in your attire for the playoffs. And that potentially might mean a new jersey, potentially a white one. Of course, Royal Sports has all of those waiting for you at 750 Pembina Highway with customization with your favorite player's name and number, or heck, your favorite number and your own name on it. However you want, Royal Sports is your headquarters for the best in Jets gear. And hey, with St. Patrick's Day coming up and the playoffs, you got to get down and check out the incredible hat collaborations they did with New Era, snapbacks and fitted hats of multiple Winnipeg Jet logos in color schemes that we have basically never seen before, but in particular, some very sweet green ones that might go well with your St. Paddy's Day outfit. Lots of great new bomber gear coming in as well. Major League Baseball for the upcoming season. The biggest hockey section in town with everything from full equipment right down to skates, pucks, stake tape, and skate sharpening, and tons of cool stuff on this King Skate Snow and Surf side, including a big new shipment of amazing Yeti coolers, some in Winnipeg Jet colors as well. So check those out. 750 Pembina Highway. Follow them on Instagram at Royal Sports Winnipeg for the latest merchandise drops and sale information. Hey, tonight, looking for a great spot to watch the game? You know where to go. Your local Boston Pizza. 6:30 puck drop tonight. The game will be on all the big screens with big sound in every BP sports bar throughout the city and the province. And while you're there, make sure to grab a player for their Pick a Player contest. If he scores, you'll be able to spin the BP prize wheel for great BP food and swag from Royal Sports. And, of course, you'll enjoy ice-cold schooners, world-famous BP wings, gourmet pizzas, and more at your local Boston Pizza, your number one home for Winnipeg Jets hockey when the team is on the road. I do want to mention, guys, we are into OT for our push for the Health Sciences Center Foundation Fund a Need campaign, helping to purchase new equipment for the Health Sciences Center's Adult Emergency Department and help the HSC, Manitoba's hospital, deliver tomorrow's healthcare today. Many of you know or will remember, I spent quite a bit of time a few years ago at HSC, and it has been, honestly, life-changing to help me get to where I am today. It would not have been possible without the incredible people at the HSC, so it's something that's important to me. If you click this link, there's an article on sort of my health journey through HSC, but also your option to donate. And again, any donation of $25 or more, you'll get a tax receipt and you'll get entered to win an autographed Winnipeg Jets jersey, which we'll give away after it ends. So we're pushing through to the end of the week. OT, the Winnipeg Sports Talk and HSC Foundation Fund a Need campaign. If you are able to, we greatly appreciate any donations you can make. Link in the description of this video, link in the description of the podcast. Maybe we'll throw it in the chat right now as well. In fact, I will do that right now just to make it that much easier for you. Oh, Remis has already done it, like the expert professional that he is. So let's make that happen. Also, want to give a big shout out to our friends at Little Brown Jug. Now, we are working on another BP LBJ watch party. We did it earlier this year for the Detroit game, had an absolute blast at BP Polo Park. And, we're trying to move around a little bit. I mean, we've done a bunch of things in the south side of the city. We've done things downtown. We did Polo Park. We're fixing to get together with all of you on March 20th for the Oiler game, which is an 8 p.m. start at the Boston Pizza on McPhillips out by Garden City. So mark that down, save the date, and we'll have some great prizes from Little Brown Jug, from Boston Pizza. We'll do some contesting before and in between periods. And most of all, we'll get the Winnipeg Sports Talk crew together again. I mean, we absolutely packed the BP Polo for that Detroit game. And listen, Jets-Oilers, what a great matchup to do it for. So March 20th, save the date. We'll have more details on it, but I hope you can join us for a Little Brown Jug watch party with Boston Pizza, and LBJ is going to be on taps there. And as we try and support more local and more Canadian products, I know many of you normal beer drinkers, if you haven't already tried the pride of Winnipeg's local beer scene, Little Brown Jug, 1919, their flagship brand, the generic lager, which is the closest to domestic, you can do exactly that, and we'll have a chance to do that. March 20th, Thursday night, 8 p.m. game at Boston Pizza, Garden City on McPhillips. Hope you can join us there. All right. We had that great conversation with Ken Bentley last week, who has been on the job with the Bison women's volleyball team for 39 years. We're going to the other end of the spectrum. Chris Voth, who was a star for the University of Manitoba Bisons while I was working there for a while, ended up going to the national team and then overseas playing professionally and coaching, came back home to his hometown of Winnipeg and is the new head coach of the Winnipeg Westmen men's volleyball team, who for the first time in their history are hosting the Canada West Final Four on Friday after beating Manitoba last week. Of course, the Nationals are in Brandon as well this year, so win and they are into the Nationals. But a huge week of great volleyball beginning on Friday at Duckworth Center, 5 p.m. it gets going. Let's welcome in Chris Voth, head coach of the Westmen, to tee up the tournament on the weekend and fill us in on his first year on the job. Chris, what's going on? It's great to see you. How are you?
Hello, good to see you again. It's been a while. Glad to be back.
No doubt. I will admit, we go back to the Bison days when you were a star for the University of Manitoba, and it is a little strange seeing you there in the black and red of the Winnipeg Westmen, but it seems to fit quite well with the season that you and your squad's having. How's the first year as head coach of the Westmen going for you?
Yeah, it's been going really great. Thank you so much. I'm really proud to be with the University of Winnipeg and wearing red. It's funny when you look at the rosters and the coaching staff of both U of M and U of W, there's a lot of crossover. So Garth was a Westman. He's on a Ring of Honor. Phil was a Bison. So I think there's a lot of transitioning that goes on between the two.
Yeah, tons of cross-pollination between the two powerhouses in the city. First off, congratulations. Big win against Manitoba on the weekend and now hosting the Final Four for the first time. It was sort of funny. We had Ken Bentley on last week. And of course, Ken and his women's team from the University of Manitoba are having a great season. He's been there for 39 years. You're on the other end of the docket, just finishing your pro career and coaching for the first time this season, but it's going well. How has the transition gone for you from a pro player back here to your hometown and now coaching, the Westmen to some great heights and a first ever Final Four host?
Yeah, it's great. I was actually coaching in Europe for 4 years, but one of those years I was a player coach. So I was fortunate enough to learn a lot from the clubs out there and was coaching at a good level. And so the transition has been interesting. It's obviously there's a difference between the professional leagues and the U Sport League. But it's been great. The team was already had a really great culture, and I was really honored to be selected to be the one to lead the team.
You obviously, as I mentioned, had an amazing career at the University of Manitoba. And then if you could, for our listeners, tell us about the path that sort of you went through before coming back home to the University of Winnipeg, because you both played professionally overseas and, as you mentioned, sort of transitioned while you were there into coaching.
Yeah, so I left after graduating from U of M. I went and played at the full-time center with the national team for 1 year, and then went over to Netherlands, played 2 years there, 1 year in Finland, a year in Czechia, and then back to Netherlands. And that was my retirement. I came back and was ready to stop playing and maybe transition into a different career, but found myself coaching at Red River College. And then after that year, went back to Netherlands, started coaching professionally there, and then was in Switzerland for 3 seasons. It was the second year that I was in Switzerland where I was player coach, and hurt myself pretty badly, tore my hip flexor and herniated 2 discs. So then I thought, you know what, I think it's actually just good to coach. I don't need to play anymore. So then I just was coaching after that. And then it was when I was with the national team, actually, in the summer with the Next Gen squad, that I got the call to take over the Westman program. And so I had to fly back to Switzerland, cancel my contract, collect all my stuff, and then come back to Winnipeg. So it was pretty hectic back then, but very happy with the decision, and it's going great.
What was it about the opportunity with the Westman that said, you know what, this is worth changing the path that you had right now, grabbing 7 bags and hauling them back to Winnipeg and getting down to work?
Yeah, it was a really great team, and I knew Larry very well. Tried to help him out as much as I could, and I knew that the team was great. They were hungry, ready to have a great season. I think most importantly, I was coming back to family and friends, and got to reconnect with everyone. So yeah, it's been great to be back in Winnipeg. It's a lot colder than I remember. But definitely the transition of grabbing all my stuff and my husband's stuff from our apartment in Switzerland was difficult. But yeah, it's glad it worked out.
Yeah, I guess for the last decade, you were getting out of Winnipeg at the right time. And now it was memories of all those days driving to practice back out at Investors Group Athletic Center. You're doing it all over again. Tell us about this team and just the challenge of coming in, taking over as a first-year coach with a talented team, and how the season's gone so far heading into this weekend.
Yeah, the team was great the year before. They finished 7th in regular season, but they made a good playoff run. And although we lost 3 starters, we had a core group that was still there, and I knew that they were hungry and looking, to have a better season. And so it was great. I brought in some tricks that I learned out with the pro leagues in Europe, and a couple things from the national team, working with some amazing coaches there. And they were just hungry. Like they totally bought in from the beginning. And it's such a great group. So I'm happy with how that went.
You would have been part of the amazing Bisons-Westman rivalry for many years as a player. How is it? Is it more difficult to be a, excuse me. I mean, if you can just cut this. Yep. Chris, you've been a part of the incredible Westman-Bison rivalry for many years as a player. Now you're on the sidelines. What's it like, first of all, being on the Westman side of things, but also being a coach as opposed to a player after all those years, being a little more hands-on, I guess, on the result?
Right. I think the rivalry between the 2 universities is something that you don't see anywhere else in the country. I don't know, but I think they're the 2 closest universities to each other. And whenever we play, it always brings out the best in both teams. So it's obviously a special connection between the 2. We spoke already about the cross-pollination that happens. And so it's really fun to be a part of those matches. Being a coach versus a player, initially when I first started coaching, I was thinking, okay, like I could do this. I can jump in and show them how to do it. But after hurting myself a couple times, and now I go, okay, I'm totally satisfied being on the side. These guys can do things that I can't, so I'll leave it to them.
Yeah, I was wondering how much you'd mix it up with the fellas in practice, kind of showing that you still got the game, or said, you know what, it's time to really embrace the coaching role as opposed to the player coach that you did back in Europe.
Only when it's needed.
Chris Voth is with us. He's the head coach of the University of Winnipeg Westman. They are the number 1 seed in the Can West Final Four, which goes on Friday. The Westman and Saskatchewan play at 5 p.m. And a big carrot for this first game, Chris, in that a win on Friday, putting you into the finals. Obviously, the goal is to win the Final Four, but that will punch a ticket to nationals. Explain how that works.
Yeah, so the way the league gets set up, to my understanding, changes quite frequently. But with this season, how it works is if you medal in Canada West, then you qualify for the U Sport Championship in Brandon. So like you said, there's the semis and finals and bronze medal games. So we just need to win one of 2 matches this weekend, and then that would allow us to qualify and get invited to the party in Brandon. But it's tough. Like it's the Can West League is really strong. We lost to teams at the top and the bottom of the standings, so we can't take any game for granted. And this Saskatchewan team is doing really well right now. They're just coming off a 3-0 victory off Trinity Western, which I think is another top team in the country. So it's going to be a challenge for sure.
Coming off that big win against Manitoba, I'm sure you guys will be up for it. The final for the event and the Final Four is Saturday night at 7 p.m. Chris, I do want to ask you about just the volleyball in Manitoba. We had Ken Bentley on, who of course has been, I believe it's his 39th year as the coach of Manitoba, and his women are having a great season again. You grew up here, you were a player here, you started at the U of M, and then you've been gone. What can you say about the level of talent in this province and the grassroots volleyball programs that continue to grow? It seems like we're in a pretty good place, both, at the university level, but also below that people might not see on a daily basis.
Yeah, it's really great. Out of our 19 players on the team, 18 of them come from Manitoba and from Winnipeg and from small towns around. So it's really great, the job that Larry did before I got here, and to kind of harvest that locally grown talent. But working with the Volleyball Manitoba on the committee, I know that there's a lot of great coaches out there, both at the high school and the club level, that build up the programs and allow for our university to succeed. So it was really special. Actually, just a couple of weeks ago, we had Coach Appreciation Night, where the players could invite a previous coach to the match, and this was great because without those coaches, they wouldn't be here, and our program wouldn't be where it is right now.
That's a really cool endeavor that you guys are putting together. I got to ask you about the coaching gig. The one thing that's probably a little different than pro, and certainly from when you were a player, is the recruiting side of things. I mean, how's recruiting? And you mentioned just how much local talent there is. Or when you're not playing and coaching your own team, are you ripping around the province talking to young potential stars of the Westman in the future?
Definitely. Yeah, I've expanded the search a little bit across Canada and internationally. But for sure, something that's really unique to this team is the fact that everyone's from the same area. So I do want to protect that. I don't want to come in and just mess everything up in my first year. We'll save that for later. But yeah, it's great. I'm trying to work with as many club teams as I can, trying to get out, watch tournaments, watch a lot of high school. So that's always really special to see.
Well, again, coming off there, a big win, a 3-0 sweep over Manitoba. The Westmen, for the first time, hosting the Canada West Final Four. For folks that are familiar with volleyball that haven't seen it, just give us a bit of an idea about the level of play if people decide to grab some tickets and come out and see your squad as well as the other 4 teams competing on the weekend.
Definitely. So I think that the level of the volleyball that's being played is the highest in the country. And this tournament will be hard-fought battles every game. I think it's going to be really exciting. Our team especially is one that fights for every point. They're relentless. They play with grit. And that's something that I've gotten a lot of feedback on, that fans and alumni and supporters have expressed that they love how positive and how energetic the team is, and how they go after every point, regardless of what the score is, regardless of the opponent, just having that tenacity. So hopefully when you come out, you can be wearing red and enjoy some good volleyball.
A great opportunity to get behind the Westmen for a trip to Nationals and a trip to the Final Four Championship on Saturday. You can get tickets online, gang, at westman.ca/tickets. Just $10 for both matches. And I guess one win will secure. I mean, I imagine going to Nationals is probably a dream of a lot of players on this squad. Obviously, winning it, and you'll want to take care of business on Saturday. But there's a lot at stake for your team in this game on Friday.
Yeah, definitely. Something we've played with pressure for most of the season. We had a really good preseason that kind of put our team on the map, and I think a lot of teams now put a target on our back. So we've been fortunate to bring out the best in our opponents, but we've also stepped up to the plate really well. So I'm looking forward to seeing how we do this weekend. And in my career at U of M, we only went one time to Nationals, got a bronze medal. So that would be unbelievable if we could go there and just see how that first match goes.
Let's make it happen, gang. If you want to see some incredible volleyball, Westman Duckworth Center is the place to be. 5 p.m. on Friday for Winnipeg versus Saskatchewan. The winners will of the two games on Friday will move on to play in the final on Saturday. And again, a win on Friday secures a spot in the national championships later on this year in Brandon. Chris, great to catch up. Again, it's still weird to see you in that red and black, but it's great to see you continuing this journey, coming home and giving back to the sport and finding a great landing spot for yourself. We'll be pulling for the Westmen this weekend. Good luck. Thanks so much. And hopefully we can be chatting about the Nationals in a few weeks here on Winnipeg Sports Talk.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much for having me. It's been great catching up and nice to see you again.
All right. Thanks again to Chris Voth, and good luck to the Winnipeg Westmen Friday, 5 p.m. at Duckworth. And if they're able to beat Sask, they'll be playing for a Canada West Championship, 7 p.m. on Saturday night down at the Duck. All right. Let's get to the Cool Bet lines, because we've got a lot going on in the National Hockey League. But I did see Matt Hyman asking if I had a little afternoon delight for the Brier. So again, this is kind of for everyone with us live, because these games start in 15 minutes. And I know Yin Vivian's fired up for it. Tough one for Reed Carruthers last night. He got smoked by Gushue. And Gushue, I don't know, I think the rumors of their demise were greatly exaggerated. He's been on one so far. I know their team was 0-4 in their last event. It just looks like Gushue with the Brier again, even with Botcher on his team. Canada, Gushue, 769 favorites against New Brunswick. I'm actually going to take them on the rock line to clear 3.5 and to win by 4 against New Brunswick. This Dunstone game, I like this Tardy, the guy that's listen, Dunstone's going to win. He's a minus 1250. The question is whether Newfoundland can keep this one within 5 and win by 4 and lose by 4 or less. I actually think that they can. So I'm going to take Newfoundland plus 4.5. And we're going to ride with Reed Carruthers for a big bounce back game against Epping in Northern Ontario, who's looked pretty good so far. So plus 170 on Carruthers, even money on Newfoundland plus 4.5, Canada minus 3.5. Cook those up together plus 818 if you want to go for the parlay. Otherwise, all the games are up and continue draw by draw over at Coolbet. But National Hockey League tonight, huge slate of games. Nashville's in Boston to take on the Bruins. Bruins, of course, traded Trent Frederick earlier today to Edmonton. Bruins minus 130 favorites. The Sabres battled back last night. I thought they'd completely quit. They were down 3-0 early to the Habs. They came back, tied it at 3, lost in extras. They're back at home to the Sharks, who just beat the Leafs in overtime or a shootout last night. Buffalo minus 222 favorites. The Canes are minus 196 faves in Detroit against the Wings. Big game for the Calgary Flames. They are in a dead heat for that final wild card spot with Vancouver, both with St. Louis breathing down their necks, although they've got 2 games in hand on St. Louis. Calgary's plus 125 in Philly tonight. The Blue Jackets coming off their successful weekend, try to keep their grip on the first wild card in the East. Columbus plus 135. Tampa had their 8-game win streak broken last night to the Panthers. They're playing on back-to-backs. Tampa minus 159 favorites this evening. The Jets, a big minus 192 favorite over the Islanders, who lost last night 4-0 to the New York Rangers. We've got the Devils and Stars going at it. Dallas, a minus 159 favorite. New Jersey, of course, playing without Jack Hughes. Avalanche are a big minus 278 favorite against the draft lottery-bound Penguins. The Oilers are minus 345 faves against the Ducks. And the Wild are in Seattle, take on the Kraken. Wild still without Eriksson, Ek, and Kaprizov. Plus 101 from Minnesota, one of the best road teams in the league. And the Kraken are minus 119. Now, I do need to get the exclusives up right now because we did put together a little WST parlay today. Listen, Kyle Connor has had so many shots lately. I think he breaks through tonight to score. But I'm also, Remis, leaning on the emergence of the Lowry line once again. It's been a little quiet for those guys lately. Nito Niederreiter, Adam Lowry both could use a point. So let's call it Niederreiter and Lowry point. Kyle Connor goal, Jets to win. That is up at 9-1, boosted to plus 900. So if you want to ride with me on that, that is in the Coolbet exclusives in the left margin. Of course, plenty of options in the combo cards, including our partner parlay, which is Calgary, Dallas, and the Avalanche. And that one's got a nice boost from plus 399 up to plus 459. So we'll roll on that, lock that one in for tonight. And we've also got points from the point, the defenseman scoring one, Morrissey, Bouchard, and Makar all to get a point tonight. Who's in the Lamplighters? Pasta, Draisaitl, and McKinnon, plus 732. Some other great options as well for you up there. The super boost tonight is a Mark Scheifele point and a Connor McDavid point. That's boosted to minus 125 if you want to get in on that. But puck drop at 6:30. Briar getting underway in about 10. And Remo, tomorrow, a big celebratory show on Winnipeg Sports Talk, episode 1000. I can't believe we've done 999 of these. And we will dive into trade deadline chat with Frank Saravelli, insider from Daily Faceoff. We will have ESPN's Greg Wyshynski, and pending further mediation and negotiations, a return of Gary Lawless from show number 1 to show 1000. We can't guarantee anything. You know, Gary's quite a diva, has many demands, but we're trying to see those demands and have him on for what should be a fun segment.
Yeah, what'd you do? You pissed off Gary. Now he doesn't want to come on.
Listen, he's easily irritated. Can I just put it that way? He's got very thin skin. Here it is. This is the tweet that he put out yesterday. It pains me to write this, but a phone call between Hustlerama and myself has resulted in major beef. I have been aggrieved. Winnipeg Sports Talk is celebrating its 1000th show this week. I would have loved to have taken part, but at this point, I see no path forward. We did put out a tweet later on, Remis, if you could put that up. This was a little update because there was a lot of comments, a lot of heat coming in on social media. After some, okay, it pains me to say, after some mediation, we've reached a truce for now. Things are still a bit shaky, but an appearance is set for Wednesday. Stay tuned. To which Gary did quote tweet, saying that things were shaky at best. Cross your fingers that we'll be able to navigate through this. It's like negotiating with Trump. You just have to know who you're dealing with, play your cards right, and I think we'll be able to do that. I know this man as well as any, and I'm pretty sure we can make it happen. So a visit tomorrow from Gary, tentatively planned, but we can't really guarantee it until he shows up right now, because as he tweeted out yesterday, very publicly, he has been aggrieved. Any big predictions for this game tonight, Remis?
Yeah, Jets. It's like one of those games where you win and you get to take a player from the losing team. Jets win and then acquire Brock Nelson after, right? Isn't that how it's going to go? They now just switch his locker room?
That would be amazing. Brock, grab your bag. We're going to Philly.
He is on top of the Daily Faceoff trade board, TSN. You know, it's like almost deadline day, so you got to get the final trade boards in, and they put TSN has Brock Nelson, #1 trade. I got to keep track of all the names. Trade bait board.
They've been listening to WST. They know he's definitely #1 on my trade bait board. But some interesting names there. Scott Lawton's at 3. Risto is at 5. Our old buddy Brandon Tanev at 6. And one guy that we have not talked about, but could be a thought to pivot if Nelson not available and you can't get no O'Reilly. I mean, some of the bigger fish, but Ryan Donato quietly having a very productive season in Chicago. I believe he's got 22 goals. Let me pull this up. I had it here. He's got 22 goals and 23 assists for 45 points in 59 games. The Blackhawks stink, but he's actually been doing it without power play time. Pretty much all of his production, from what I gather, is at 5-on-5. So, maybe this would be an opportunity for him to come in and add even a little bit more pop to that line, along with Ehlers and Perfetti. For the time being, though, they'll continue to roll with Vlad, who has been very serviceable in his spot. You can see the rest of this trade bait board. I mean, Braden Shen's at 10. I think he'd probably be higher. Same with Dylan Cousins, if it was more likely that they would be moved. Yanni Gourde's an interesting guy that can play center that, maybe is a secondary option for a team like the Winnipeg Jets. Carson Soucy's at 9 from Vancouver, left shot D. He's another guy that we've heard the Jets have had interest in so far. You got Kyle Palmieri, Luke Shen as well. And then the rest of the top 24, Mike McCarron. Speaking of big dudes, he is huge. Casey Middlestat, 18. Jamie Alexiak, a guy that we've spoken about quite a bit. And Mikko Rantanen is now down to 21 on the list. So I guess it is less likely that he is going to be traded. Nick Robertson, Nick Bukestad, Boehm Byram as well. So we'll get the latest on the deadline with some of the best in the biz tomorrow on our 1000th show. Frank Saravelli, Greg Wyshynski, and maybe the diva, Gary Lawless. We will see. And again, Friday, huge day. We'll have a whole bunch of our regulars jump on with us. We're going to start off at 11 a.m. Connor will be with us for the duration of it. We'll get Rowicki jumping on, hopefully Rennie, maybe Hammer, as well as reaction from around the National Hockey League with all of the deadline deal trades. Thanks again to all the sponsors that make Winnipeg Sports Talk happen each and every day. For 999 great shows and 1,000 tomorrow. I greatly appreciate the support. Couldn't do it without him. And of course, all of you in the chat with us every day, podcast listeners, firing it up when you're done work. Thank you so much. And make sure to join us tomorrow for what should be a fun milestone show, number 1,000, heading into the trade deadline tomorrow on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Enjoy the game tonight. We'll see you tomorrow at 1 for show 1,000 on WST.
Oh my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.